In 2005 Afghanistan, Navy SEALs Marcus Luttrell, Michael Murphy, Danny Dietz, and Matthew Axelson deploy on a mission of surveillance to take out a Taliban leader, Ahmad Shah. Though spotted by goat herds, Luttrell and his team decide not to kill them, but one of the Afghans alerts a group of Taliban fighters to the invaders, and a terrible battle ensues, in which the SEALs find themselves hopelessly outnumbered and outgunned. Welcome to another feature presentation of Midnight Double Feature, and on this episode, we'll be covering 2013's Lone Survivor, written and directed by Peter Berg.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Midnight Double Feature. We are here covering Lone Survivor, but we are not alone. And when I say we, Colin, I don't give a shit about Colin.
Yeah, right.
Returning from the Aliens podcast is Josh. What is happening, Josh?
Hey, what's up? Here for another yuck 'em up, fun shoot 'em up adventure. Hey, pew pew pew.
Well, we're taking advantage of you in a big bad way for this one. I mean, I'm just like, hey, you don't have any military experience, do you? I mean, you're just gonna come in and talk about this movie, right?
Yeah. So I should. So I do want to. I kind of want to just preface it and just throw it out there. And kind of get into a couple quick specifics just as a precursor, because obviously we're talking about a movie which is based on real events. Well, talking about a movie which is based on a book which is based on real events. Mm-hmm. And so I was a U.S. Marine Corps infantry officer. I did serve in combat in Afghanistan a little bit later than this movie and a little bit further south. I was in Helmand Province. Not a fucking Navy SEAL, not a special operator in any way, but I did fight anti-coalition militia. I did have some exposure to some things which have a remote relevance to this movie. Anything I say, I just want it to be clear, is going to be my opinion. It doesn't represent anything else. I'm not saying I know any better. I'm certainly not saying I'm some kind of badass. In any way, I have opinions about the movie, the operation. But yeah, anyway, that's my preface. No big deal.
Hell yeah, perfect. Our disclaimer, dude. Thanks so much for coming on, man.
Yeah. I'm also just an ass clown who podcasts, so none of that other shit matters.
I love it, dude, because you are a badass, and you're a fucking badass podcaster. Tell us about the new podcast you just launched. In addition to what you already have got going on at LSG Media with the X-Files podcast.
Yeah, so that's been I've been under the wing of LSG Media for a long time and hope to remain so for a long time. The X-Files podcast is the main thing I do with Dean, the man behind LSG Media. So we cover the whole series, and we're currently going into season 4. It's been a blast. Got a great community over there, and I actually just started with some other friends a actual play RPG podcast called Nastygram, which literally launched last week. So really excited about that. If you're into RPGs, I think you'll really love it. But even if you're not, I think it might be worth checking out. It's we're not nitty gritty about rules. We try to make it a pretty authentic, sit down around the table, get some table talk in there. And we really gear towards more collaborative storytelling and role playing, but also kind of keeping it light, having fun with it. So, yeah, it's been exciting. It's been a cool first podcast project I've ever started on my own. Again, with a lot of friends involved in the creation, but me doing most of the behind the scenes work. So that's been fun.
Nice, dude. That sounds super exciting. I mean, if it's anything like what we talked about off air with Hollow Falls that you guys had with the LSG's on LSG's feed, should be good, man. Should be good. Colin, what do you got going on? What's happening?
My name is Colin. I am a host at Midnight Double Feature. I'm a Sagittarius and a vegan. No, I'm just kidding. I'm good, dude. I'm excited. I got a bit of a sinus thing going on. If I sound a little stopped up, it's because I was out all night doing coke with Mick Jagger. So my shit. If I sound a little weird, just allergies, and it's been up and down here with the weather lately. So it just totally fucking rocked me. So it's funny because I'm watching, and I feel sick and my nose is stopped up. I'm like, man, I hate this. And I watch this movie and I'm like, you're such a bitch. You're such a little bitch, dude. I was like, fucking stop complaining, you bitch. And I was like, okay, yeah, I guess I should stop complaining. But I'm really excited to have Josh on. I'm glad we did Aliens. I still love the voiceover thing we did at the beginning of that because Josh fucking killed that. Him and Jess's from Misery were so fucking good. I love doing those, and I'm excited to have him back on. Thanks for coming on, dude.
Dude, I'm psyched. I was really glad you guys asked. It's an honor to come on. I love what you guys have done. You guys have really you started off strong, to be honest, but I think you've increasingly come into your own and become a pretty heavy hitter in the film podcast world. So I appreciate the invite. I'm right up there with all the fucking A-list directors and actors you guys have on the show nowadays. And here's this dude who does an X-Files and some nerd shit.
You are the most valued, dude. I mean, again, I think we talked about the Alien podcast. Colin, this show would not be anything without you and the other guys at LSG. So, dude,
dude, if I can point out a specific science fiction film the science fiction film podcast, which you can get if you sign up for, what is it? LSGmedia.net. Is that what it is?
LibertyStreetGeek.net.
LibertyStreetGeek.net.
Do you hear that, Dean? Do you hear that, Dean? I plugged it. Okay. All right, Daddy.
What I love is it.
Also, Dean, he's wearing your shirt as well. Just I know you can't see him, but
it's not an LSG shirt. It's actually just one of Dean's personal shirts. He's just wearing one of them. Fucking Highlander from the Science Fiction Film Podcast is one of the greatest episodes of any podcast I've ever I worked in a factory at the time and I had to stop and go park this fucking 1,000-pound equipment and be like, I've got to stop laughing, dude. My stomach hurts and my eyes are quiet. They're talking about Christopher Lambert. I cannot see anything. I'm blind. And a dude just fucking laughing my ass off the whole time, dude. And I was like, I got to go to the bathroom, man. I can't do this right now. So,
and of course, the Egyptian. The Egyptian played by Sean Connery with a classic Egyptian accent.
Dude, that is top tier science fiction, LSG, anything, dude. I fucking love that episode. It's great. Check it out.
Well, we're desperately trying to get our laughs out now, as we said
earlier,
yeah. Because this movie, there's not that many laughs in this movie. All right, look, we're going to go through Lone Survivor. We're going to go through it sequentially. Follow us on our socials. Just scroll down. I'm not going to go ahead and plug them here, but I will plug the Patreon. The Patreon is $5 a month. Head to midnightdoubleFeature.com, midnightdoubleFeature.com, or patreon.com/midnightdoubleFeature. Get bonus episodes and shit like that. That's all I'm going to do because this episode is somewhat daunting to cover. We don't do a lot of true stories, but when we do, we don't do a lot of true stories that end in sort of like tragedy. They're often kind of upbeat true stories or true stories where, or like Rush, right? Like Rush is a true story, but it's about racing. And, at the end of the movie, they walk away, right? Both of them walk away and both of them survive. So this movie is...
We're here to talk about Rudy, right? We're talking about Rudy. And that uplifting story of
Rudy.
Of Samwise, right?
Samwise. Yeah. No, this is gonna be tough, I think. And taking notes for this one was kind of rough. I'm more interested in the real world aspect of this particular sort of situation than I am the movie. And I'm using the movie as kind of like a crutch to talk about the real life situation because it's actually kind of wild. Doing research on it, I listened to a few interviews with Marcus Luttrell. I've been doing a lot of reading for probably about the last month, even before I kind of suggested this episode. I watched this back in the theater back in I think 2013, 2014 when it released. And, I walked out and I was like, man, I thought it was powerful at the time. I walked out and I was like, that was a super powerful movie. I want to look into it. And, finding out about the actual guys, the actual guys that died up on that mountain, what they went through. And then, hearing the story of like Luttrell being rescued by someone that you would probably normally perceive in that situation to be an enemy, right? I mean, like that was wild to me. But look, it's not a perfect movie, and I think we're all probably going to say that. I'm going to be the first one to probably say it. It's definitely not a perfect movie. The dialogue is wild at some points. Like there is some Michael Bay action movie dialogue sometimes in this movie
from the director who brought you Battleship.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what sucks, because for the most part, I dig Peter Berg. Peter Berg's not a bad director. I like The Kingdom, Friday Night Lights, right? I mean, like, and whether or not you think it's okay to make a movie that soon after it, but the Patriots Day, not bad, not a bad movie. The movie's a bit, whatever, but the situation is wild. So I woke up to a message this morning from Colin. He's like, "Hey, this kind of a random pick for you." I'm just like, "Yeah, well, look, we don't talk about military movies a lot. We don't talk about war films. We've never covered a war film, like any movie in that genre, whether it's Vietnam War, whether it's World War II, whether it's modern warfare. We've never covered a military-driven film, and I thought it was finally time that we should probably get one up on the board. And for me, probably the best sort of quote modern warfare movie is Black Hawk Down. I think Black Hawk Down is probably one of the best that's up there, right? I mean, like, there's not that many to choose from. Like, Jarhead, Act of Valor. Act of Valor's not great.
Well, I think if you're talking like modern, like one of my one of my personal favorites. I had a buddy who in high school he was in like the ROTC program, and he ended up becoming a Marine. And he did. I can't remember. I know he did at least one tour, if not two, but I can't remember. It's been in the early 2000s, and he showed me A Bridge Too Far with Gene Hackman. I fucking love that movie, dude. If you ever get the chance, A Bridge Too Far is fucking great, and that's like when the first one I think of a war movie. That's what really pops in my mind. But yeah, there is like there's some great. Even something like Brothers with Jake Gyllenhaal and Tobey Maguire. It's like that's an interesting movie I really want to see. I guess it's not technically a war film, but it's kind of like the after effects of it. But yeah, modern war films, I'm just not really like well versed on them. It's not that I don't like them. I just really haven't seen a lot of them.
Not a film, but I would definitely throw out the HBO series Generation Kill, which is another thing that's based off. That one's nice because it's based off a few different things, but it is based on real events. There's a couple books that one was called Generation Kill, which was written by the embedded reporter. And then there's a book called One Bullet Away, which was written by the lieutenant or one of the lieutenants of that unit that is followed most closely. But for my personal perspective, that is one of the best depictions of modern warfare. And not just this movie is really on the action. That Generation Kill is a great look at what are the guys like that are there? How do they talk to each other? What's the humor? What's the boredom? What's the bullshit that they deal with? There's good action in it too, and there's some heavy moments. There's some levity. It's a good mix, but it's one of the most, and there's still Hollywood sauce on it, but one of the most authentic things that I would say about modern warfare or whatever, modern combat experiences in the Middle East at least.
Yeah, I've definitely heard you mention Generation Kill before, and it's been on my list forever because I'm a piece of shit like that. Look, I've already kind of like somewhat given my thoughts on this. Let's throw it over to you, Josh. What do you think about this movie? What do you think about where were you when you heard about this situation going down in real life?
Yes. So I was in college. So I didn't join the Marines till 2008. So a few years after this. And it was something that I had always been interested in the military. So it was a story that I kind of followed, but through pretty mainstream media lens. And it wasn't really towards a lot later, kind of a few years into my career that I kind of looked back on it more. I do want to kind of take this moment too to throw it to you guys. Feel free. And again, I am not any kind of badass in any way, but any questions you have that I might be able to shed some insight on, from my limited perspective, I would be happy. There's nothing I feel off bounds about talking about. So, if I can give any illum on anything, I'd be happy to.
Oh no, dude, I did my research. We don't need you for this.
No, fine, whatever. But like I said, I was an infantry guy. Never served in any kind of special operations unit. I did actually start the process of applying for one towards the end of my time in, and ended up changing my mind and dropping papers. But I had started the process of applying for MARSOC, which is Marine Special Operations Command. But during my time, I did we did a few ops with a couple different spec ops units. I did work with SEALs once, very on the exterior. But I have some very close friends who were in the past and are currently in some pretty high tier units who are infinitely more badass than I will ever be, that I really respect their input on. So that definitely colors my perspective a lot, because this movie is pretty looked down upon by most of those people.
Really?
Yeah. And again, I'm sure there's many people that would disagree. I'm sure there's many people in those communities that would disagree with it. But in general, this movie to me is it's war porn. It's taking a tragedy and kind of, I hate to say it, but kind of perverting it into something that's kind of like a rah, and it's not what it is. Right. And you can look at it and be like, what are you talking about? It's horrible. It's brutal, but you watch it and the way it's directed and the way it's shot and the slow-mo and the heroics and the music in the background. And it's just like, no, man, this was a brutal fucking failure of a bad op that was pretty poorly planned and executed, and resulted in the deaths of a lot of real heroes. It's not on them, but this is not a good thing that happened. And in a way, there's a part of me that just wants to like, hey, shut the fuck up. This pays homage to guys that definitely deserve to have homage paid to them. But we could actually try to do that accurately if we ever gave a shit about doing that, but that probably wouldn't put a lot of asses in seats. So that's kind of my overall thoughts on it. There's definitely things to like. There's things they do really well. There's details they get done great. As an action movie, it's pretty fucking good. Yeah. I mean, talk about action, the way it's shot. I mean, the sound is badass in it. The way... I will say, like, the way every helicopter sounds, the way every weapon being fired sounds is it really pulls you in. It's very accurate. But overall, I think it's kind of like we're kind of really sugarcoating a thing that we're
sensationalizing it.
Yeah, it's kind of gross.
Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't think about it from that perspective. I mean, obviously, neither one of us having any kind of experience at all. I can fucking, I may have shot a gun 2 or 3 times in my life. Can't do any push-ups. Can't do any of that shit. I can't run for shit. I would not fare well in the military at all. But it's interesting hearing that, because there is kind of that feeling like, because I remember there was kind of some talk about that when, what is the Bradley Cooper? Is it American Sniper?
American
is that
Sniper.
the one?
Yeah.
Right. And I kind of heard stuff like that when American Sniper came out, and not, because it's really hard with any kind of movie like this to really put an entire, to take in a situation, make it feel completely three-dimensional and get every aspect of what exactly went down. And I mean, even Luttrell himself is like, yeah, a lot of this stuff is kind of like fabricated. A lot of this stuff didn't actually happen. He's like, it's a good movie. And he's like, and I'm glad they did it. But like Josh said, if you're going to do it, do it all the way. I could definitely, that's an interesting twist on it, as in, like, if you want to pay homage, that's great, but let's do it the correct way. That's really interesting. I like that.
Let me add one more thing on a scale. So I know I mentioned this on a couple LSG podcasts, but the military / war movie that drives me more crazy than any other is The Hurt Locker. So, I don't know a single veteran that has any real experience that doesn't fucking despise that movie. And the fact that it got the success and the acclaim that it got is, I mean, I hate to use the word offended, but it is the movie that just absolutely drives me bonkers. So again, not a fucking badass in any way. I have a very, very close, one of my closest friends who is currently in a national level tier 1 unit. And I was like, hey, doing a podcast on Lone Survivor, I was like, on a scale of 1 to 10, if 1 is like Band of Brothers Generation Kill and 10 is Hurt Locker, where would you put this on the bullshit scale? He said 8.
Damn.
Oh shit.
I would have said more towards like a 6 or 7, but he said 8, and he's a lot more legit than I am.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough, man. I mean, like that's what I was saying. Like, I was like, fuck, okay, this movie's either going to get, no, it's going to get a lot of flack, but I want to use this to hopefully talk about the real situation, because there's some shit, dude. Like, okay, Josh, I know you probably know of him, but Colin, have you ever heard of a guy named he's actually probably one of the most powerful people out there, David Goggins?
Yes, I think I've caught him on Rogan before.
Yeah, dude, I'm reading his book right now called Can't Hurt Me. And in that book, he's talking about like, this is another reason why I kind of wanted to do this as well. He's talking about like how, dude, he was fucking crazy. Like, he went through 3 hell weeks, which is, we'll get into it. We'll get into buds. And he personally knew like every SEAL that was involved in Operation Red Wings. And he'd been through Hell Week with Marcus Luttrell, Mike Murphy, Danny Dietz. And he'd actually trained Axelson. And because of this, like, Goggins was like super, like, obviously devastated by the news. And he said, I wanted to find a way that I could raise money for their families. So he found out about the Special Operations Warrior Foundation, which apparently pays for college tuitions of children whose parents were special operators and were killed in combat. And then he realized the best way to raise money was to run races. And this guy, dude, he's an ultra marathon runner. He learned that there was an upcoming race called the Badwater 135. And at the time, he was like, this is a 135-mile race, by the way. Like, between, like, 3 mountain ranges. Like, mountain peaks. And, yeah, like that was... I'm currently reading that right now, and, like, this guy... Josh, you've heard of this guy, right?
Yeah, he's a fucking psycho. Psycho, dude. Like, even like his upbringing as well, like where he came from and like who his like father was, and his mother basically had to kind of like smuggle him out from under the thumb of his father, apparently. Yeah, it's a wild book, and if you haven't read it, I'd highly recommend it. It's called Can't Hurt Me, and it's incredibly inspirational. It definitely inspires me to get my ass out there. I think,
right? Yeah,
it's. I love when he talks about like waking up and he's like, oh, look at those shoes. Look at my running shoes, and I fucking hate them. I don't want to do it. And then I just fucking do it.
Jesus.
Psycho is the best word, I think, man. Like, he transformed himself. He transformed his mindset as well. It's wild, man. But look, what do you say we get into this shit?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. We open up on this montage because of course we do. Like, it has to be a montage. This is what I talked about earlier, called BUDS, I believe. Basic underwater demolition / SEAL is what BUD stands for. It's the Navy SEAL selection training. 24-week training course that develops a SEAL candidate's mental and physical stamina and leadership skills. Each BUDS phase includes timed physical condition tests, with the time requirements becoming more demanding each week. This is... I've heard of a few ex-Navy SEALs talk about this, and this sounds... Man, like, to me, it sounds incredibly challenging. To them, it's just like, we're fucking ready. We're fucking ready for this shit. Yeah, talk to me about this. This is fucking wild.
actually, my high school U.S. history teacher, he was the greatest teacher I've ever had in any classroom or educational stance at all. His name was Mr. Hosier, and he was a U.S. Navy SEAL who fought in Vietnam. And I think he brought in some medals someday. I think he got, I can't remember how many Purple Hearts he got. I know he had some, but he would literally just sit there and tell us combat, like borderline inappropriate for sophomores in high school, like graphic battle stories, and because I remember there were actually kids who like, went and, they told their family like, yeah, I got this teacher and he's doing this. He taught there for like 30 years. I love the guy. He was a great teacher. It wasn't just war stories. He taught you about like how the United Nations got founded. It was always, we went from World War II to World War I to Korea to Vietnam. And you covered all these different, stages through history. So him telling me about some of this stuff was just like, and he was the nicest. Oh, hey, Colin, how you doing? And I was like, dude, if I had done any of this stuff and gone through any of this, I would be a bitter fucking dude. And he was the nicest person I've ever met in my life. And I was like, man, you've got to have some kind of like crazy level of like, positive disposition, because that would not be me, dude. Like I don't feel like I would come out like a very positive person. Like I'm pessimistic enough as it is, and I haven't experienced any of this shit, so I loved that guy. I loved that teacher. I loved hearing his stories and stuff. And he was real no nonsense. You'd have somebody get out of line. He's like, okay, well, jackass, why don't you get up and go to the fucking office? And I was like, I fucking love you, dude. I love you, man. He was awesome. I missed that guy.
Yeah. I mean, it's all, it is all real footage too, from real, real
Right.
Buds classes. This is, it's Hollywood editing, but this is all real stuff. And again, haven't been through Buds. I know a lot of people that have. I have some, not critiques, but I have some issues overall with the SEAL community. And it's not a knock on their badassery at all. And in fact, maybe it's I have issues because they are so badass that ties into some ways in how they're employed and things they take on. But what I will say about Buds, from everything I've known and what I've experienced from people I've met, is that it is training that you go through. It's not training. It's screening and selection. Okay. Buds is not there to train you to be a Navy SEAL. There's a lot of, you have a lot of time after you get through Buds to get trained to be Navy SEAL. Buds is to find out who deserves to be a Navy SEAL. And it's all about heart. It is all about, it's physically demanding, but it's not the strongest and fastest and fittest that get through it. It's the guys that at the end of the day are going to get through anything that it takes. And that is one thing I think the movie does reflect well, even if the dialogue is heavy-handed at times, is the ethos of a Navy SEAL, and that they are incredibly self-sufficient, almost to a fault, that they just know that they will get through and overcome anything. And that's what Buds shakes out.
Yeah, man. It's
I
wild.
say, a guy who fucking never done it.
Hey, man, you're talking to two guys who would never have done, who would in any fucking life that we live are ever going to do it. So, yeah, there you go. But Hell Week, right? The defining event of Buds, held early on, the third week of the first phase. Apparently it's like 5.5 days of cold, wet, and brutality. And they only get like 4 hours or 3 hours sleep or something like that. That is, man, you need some, and obviously you need the mental kind of like strength for it, but the physical strength for it, but it's a mental game at that point, right? When they're fucking with your sleep, right? Like with the, like with just how much rest you're getting. That is that to me is that's the challenge right there.
Yeah, for me, the two hardest things I went through were Marine Corps OCS and then a school called IOC, Infantry Officers Course, which is a excellent school. Neither I'm not comparing them to Buds at all, but IOC is considered one of the harder courses, especially in the non-special operations community. And I will say, man, nothing fucks you up like sleep deprivation. And from what I've heard, the SEALs Hell Week does it as much or more than anything. I had touches of it, and it's just, it's not the physical aspect. It's your mind is just gone. I have this distinct memory of standing at attention, this formation getting, rushed fucking from one thing to another, getting destroyed. And the sun was on the horizon, and I had no idea. I spent the whole time looking at it and trying to figure out if it was sunrise or sunset, because I just had no concept of like where in the day, what has happened recently, what was longer ago. And dude, the SEALs Hell Week is something else from what I've heard.
Yeah. We get the title card in the voiceover of Berg as Marcus Luttrell talking about the need for us to push ourselves and fighting in the darkest and coldest of places. Again, the dialogue is incredibly heavy-handed, right? I mean, like, this is... It immediately tells you what you're kind of like in for. This sort of like this sort of like scene that they chuck here at the beginning. It can work for some people. This doesn't really work for me. Like, I don't love that whole kind of like, let's show them what's going to happen at the end of the movie at the beginning kind of thing. And like, yes, I know it's called Lone Survivor, right? I mean, like, obviously there's going to be a lone survivor, but at the same time, it's just like, is this necessary? Like, can we not just have them waking up and, we're introduced to the squad? I don't love this. What was your guys' take on this?
I can take it or leave it, especially because your movie is pushing. It's 2 hours long. 2 hours. Like, dude, you can. You can. I love the stuff at the beginning because it's like watching that. I didn't even have to look anything up to be like, that's real. That's not staged. Like, that's real footage. I love you said it was BUDS buds.
Buds. Yeah.
Bud. Okay, gotcha. That I loved, but this next part where I was just like, and apparently, even Luttrell himself was like, this never happened. He was like, I was never really, like some of the stuff I briefly read was like, obviously he was in a terrible situation and a lot of terrible stuff happened. But he was like, at this point, it wasn't really like oh my God, I'm flatlining on a table type shit. He's like, that's dramatization. I was like, oh, okay. So it's like knowing that and then seeing it, there's 5 words at the beginning of this movie that will fucking ruin a lot of movies like this based on a true story. And it's like, no, it's not. I immediately go, no. There's an insane, awful story like at the core of this that did happen, but there's anytime I see based on a true story is like, so I would say the majority of this is probably dramatization, and I would much rather read his book, to be honest. Just knowing knowing how like the military community kind of looks at it, but then also as well, even hearing it from Luttrell himself, like, a lot of that stuff was kind of, he's like, it's a movie, they're going to punch some of it up. So I'm actually curious to see what his book is like and how it differs from the movie. And, if his book, exactly how close to that is the true story. I just wonder, I'm sure it's very close, but I just haven't looked into it at all.
I'm curious to know like what Luttrell, sorry, we're not on a first name basis here. What Marcus Luttrell said was fabricated and what wasn't, because in the interviews that I watched, he said, oh, most of this is legit. Like, this is,
really
like other than how many Taliban were up there with them, like, because that is hotly disputed apparently. Like, that is like that's the big thing that nobody's like super sure of. Like, I'll get into the numbers a bit later, but like Luttrell said, this is, even like down to the point where he, when he comes across Muhammad Gulab, the guy that saved him, he actually pulled out a grenade and pulled the pin and everything. Like, that was a legit thing that he did, according to him in the interview that I watched.
So to your original question, Z, like the idea, I have no problem with a movie called Lone Survivor and a story called Lone Survivor kind of opening with the end of it. Like, if any movie should, it's a movie where it's like Titanic. Like, you could have like the end of Titanic, show you, because there's no spoiler of like, hey, guess what? One person survives. But the way it's done, it is super heavy handed. And I don't know how much, I don't want to sit through this and like sit here and be like, well, actually, every scene. Yeah. But there are a few massive shifts from reality. One of them is Luttrell flatlining. The other big things are just the way the combat unfolds, the number of people involved with it. another huge issue is later in the movie, in the third act of the attack on the village. This idea that there was this running combat that just didn't need to happen. Like this is a dramatic enough story. If you want to tell a story of brutal failure and sacrifice and the pain, you don't have to like ham it up. Like, we don't need him to flatline on the table. Like, enough bad shit happened to Marcus Luttrell, and speaking purely from my perspective, this is not fact in any way, but to what you're talking about, Colin, of wanting to read his book. One thing to bear in mind, it's not his book. Okay. It was written by a guy who writes a lot of military fiction, right? Kind of co-written, but that's the guy who actually
based
wrote
on
it.
interviews with him.
Based on interviews, a guy who's written a shitload of military fiction. Okay. And man, like, people might hate me for saying this, but the accounts of a guy who is motivated to make sure his brothers get their fucking due respect. And it's not to say that the real story is any less heroic, but are there motivations to make sure that they come out looking extremely like heroes?
Right.
When otherwise their story will never be told? Yeah. Those motivations are there, and I'll leave it at that, because that's bullshit conjecture on my part, but I don't know.
It's something that should be considered, though, right? I mean, you have one guy who walked away from this, and we're relying on that one, and he's a fucking hero, right? I mean, like, there's no sugarcoating it. Like, the guy, like, surviving what he did, because I mean, like, there is evidence of things that, like, everything that happened, right? Like, I mean, the helicopter was shot down, people did die. Like, he was being chased. It's like, it's not like this is bullshit.
Let me just say, dude, they're all fucking heroes. Every one of these dudes,
totally.
They're badasses. They're fucking SEALs. They went through buds. They've done their time. Some of them did a lot of shit before this. They went out on this mission knowing that they were going on a pretty high risk op with minimal support, a QRF that was a long ways away with sketchy comms, and they did it. And 3 of them paid the ultimate cost. And I have no doubt that they all did it heroically. But what we see in the movie, are we getting a little bit of a Call of Duty effect, I guess, is
sure. That's an interesting way to put it. For sure.
Yeah. We're waking up on base. We're slowly introduced to the quad. Mike Murphy, played by Taylor Kitsch, whose wife wants a goddamn horse for a wedding present. Okay, I guess.
Arabian.
Was unable to verify that, by the way. We meet Wahlberg as Luttrell, Ben Foster as Matt Axelson. I love Ben Foster in this movie, by the way.
Dude, that guy's great in everything.
Fuck, man. He puts in work. The interview that I was watching actually with Luttrell, it was actually on Rogan's podcast, and he was like, how much control did you have over the movie? Did you have any say? Apparently he had some kind of sign off or say in the casting of this movie, except for the lead, except for who plays Luttrell. And specifically, he's like, I was already friends with Ben Foster. I wanted Ben Foster in there to play Axe. And that's how we got Ben Foster as Axe.
Oh, hell yeah.
I think, yeah. And obviously, Emil Hirsch as Danny Dietz, who foot races Murphy around the base I think this score's great. I like the score. It's a little, let's kind of like reflect. Like, it's a very reflective, but I dig it. Like the score by Steve Jablonski, Explosion in the Sky.
Is it Explosions in the Sky? Did you say okay? Because it sounds didn't you say Sunday Night Lights is the director? Did he do that one too?
Yeah,
Friday Night Lights rather. Yeah, their Explosions in the Sky has like that's like their biggest known song is from the end of that. So yeah, they have that sound and it's beautiful.
Yeah,
but boy, is it also like perfectly emotionally manipulative.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like,
I mean, that's what movies are supposed to be.
That's right. Like, I mean, because I think when Peter Berg probably stepped out to make this movie, he's like, let me try as hard as possible to target the heartstrings of everyone who watches this. And he kind of like goes overboard, right? Like, it's like, let me put in everything as like everything that I can do to make that happen. And it's just like, if it's too much, you don't like, you kind of like oversaturate it. Like, you know, you're doing too much to try and make me emotional, and it just ends up being a little, you're trying a little bit too hard there, Peter.
Yep.
Like, you know, but they're talking about shaving Danny's head because he lost. You're the Mike Murphy. I would have expected a bigger separation. The actual Marcus Luttrell is actually sitting here with them at the table. He's in this a lot, by the way. He's in this.
Oh, cool! I didn't know that. That's badass.
He is in this a lot, dude. Like, he's in the helicopter when it gets shot down as well.
That is an awesome thing they did as part of the movie. And I did read an article with him. He talks about like the catharsis of playing this. He's essentially a no-name team guy in the movie, but being in a couple of these off scenes and then being in the helo that gets shot down, the Chinook, as part of the QRF, and he said something about like, you know, it meant a lot for me to play this character who died in that helo when like he never even saw that happen. He didn't. Right. Unlike in the movie, he did not see the Chinook get shot down. And so that's fucking pretty cool. Like, that is a cool thing that they did.
The idea of that is like, it's pretty wild. And like, you'd probably, as an actor, you'd need to, as an actor who went through this, like whose story that this is based on, you'd need to be like mentally like, fuck, can I do this? Like, you know, can I like actually like physically put myself in this position again? Yeah, it's wild. Eric Bana as Commander Christensen, dude. Eric Bana's a fucking BA. He's a fucking
I love Bana, dude.
BA.
The man makes me question my sexuality. Oh God,
dude, he's my Hulk. You know, like when I was, I was like, when did that first Hulk come out? 13 or 03? So I would have been 13. I would have been about Zoheb's age now. And no, I'm just kidding. I remember when that came out, and he was my fucking Hulk, man. Like, I still, no offense to Ruffalo or Norton, they're great, but Eric Bana is like, that's the first thing I ever saw him in as a 13-year-old. Like, he's always, that guy's probably done so much. He's probably been on Broadway and been nominated. He's like, oh, thanks, I'm the Hulk. You know, as in Troy, right? Like, fuck you, dude.
Black Hawk Down, as the Hulk. Also,
Black Hawk Down, right? He played.
It's probably been 15 or longer years since I saw that. Probably, what did that come out? 99, 01? When was that?
No.
Or was that earlier?
Black Hawk Down, 2003, 2002, something like that. No, 2000.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that. It's not
early 2000. Yeah. Okay. I thought it was like late 90s, early 2000s. I would have been like 10. Yeah, but I haven't seen it since then.
I fucking love that movie. We get the briefing scene, capture or kill Ahmad Shah. Did a little bit of reading on Ahmad Shah. Apparently, he originally fought against the Taliban and the Al Qaeda in 2001, and then after Red Wings, he and his men escaped to Pakistan because, of course, he did. That's the place to go. Where they apparently produced a video from footage they filmed of Red Wings, which included weapons and implements they'd captured. They returned to the province in 2005, where his cell was destroyed during another operation called Operation Whalers, which was planned and carried out by the 2nd Battalion of the 3rd Marine Regiment. After Operation Whalers, Shah was not able to stage attacks in Afghanistan again because he didn't have the manpower to do so. And then, ultimately, he was then killed during a shootout with Pakistani armed forces in 2008 after failing to stop at a security checkpoint while transporting a kidnapped trader. So, he ended up kind of like walking away scot-free after Red Wings, which is kind of like a fucking bummer.
Well, yeah, because I'm glad you brought that up, because I noticed, there's the way they end this movie is so emotional. I mean, that is just, dude, they're fucking just pulling on your heartstrings at the end of this movie. But I did notice the lack of that. I was like, so what happened to that guy? I mean, like there's two guys in this movie that are kind of like, that are the prominent, bad guys basically that stick out amongst like a lot of the other ones. So it's like, yeah, there was really no mention on anything. I love that, some parts of that ending, especially the picture of the two of them together of, is it Gabul? Is it Muhammad Gabul? Is that his name?
Gulab. Yeah.
Gulab. Okay. Gotcha. Of him and Luttrell. I love that picture, but yeah, I noticed that at the end. So I'm glad you brought that up. I was curious why that was absent.
Yeah, and I don't want to get overly bogged down in historical details, but like one thing, it's not just that he walked away scot-free. He actually, this was a significant win for him. He was not a big fish. This was not like some like Osama bin Laden top right-hand guy. This was a pretty random, small, local, and at a time when like the Taliban was very fractured. 2005, like it's a mess in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a complete fucking mess. It was then, it is now. It's a crazy hodgepodge of different cultures, different ethnicities, different tribal groups. There's a reason that everybody goes in Afghanistan and gets their shit pushed in, and then they leave, and then they fucking mess each other's stuff up because it's a mess of a nation. It doesn't make any sense. There's all these different people and different cultures living there. So this guy was just kind of a random guy. This operation was originally planned by a Marine Corps unit. Was originally by 2-3, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. They did a relief in place with 3-3, 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines. So when you talk about a battalion, and not to get too tied into details, but you're talking a very small level. If a battalion is planning an operation, it's probably like a guy like me, like that low level, a pretty junior officer is helping the OPSO. Hey, we got this, report from this company that this guy is somebody we should go after. And it was going to be a pretty small scale thing. And what they did is they requested support from a special operations unit called the 160th, which is the Night Stalkers, a very, very famous aviation unit.
I did some research on them. I can't wait to get into them.
Yeah, they're the biggest badasses out there. And again, like, don't want to get too tied down in minutia unless it's interesting, but unfortunately, there's a lot of shit that happens in the military that is complete bullshit bureaucracy. And a lot of it is like turf fighting and everybody trying to justify their place. And sometimes we join up and do the mission well, and sometimes it fucks stuff up. And what happened was this Marine Corps unit was like, hey, we need some aviation support. And it was a special operations unit. And they're like, we're not going to give it unless you give us more. So we want control of the first 2 phases. We want the SEALs to take lead on it. When originally it was going to be Marine Corps Scout Sniper Team. So it became this really convoluted thing. And that's part of what made this whole operation such an absolute mess. And part of what people don't talk about, because now it's kind of a fable. It's kind of like this heroic sacrifice, when reality, it was a complete shit show of planning and a kind of execution too, but mostly planning and turf fighting, and everybody trying to justify their place in things and get by, snag things for their units that they're there to represent and get missions for. So that's the only reason that the SEALs ended up on this mission. It was going to be, it was going to be a Marine Corps Scout Sniper Team who could have been like sent there by some schmuck like me. Lieutenant Bruin's like, hey, we're going to run up this op. And instead we get these badass SEAL guys because you want the aviation support. And to get that, we need control of this. And it's weird, man. Like, I don't want to get too tied up in it, but there's a lot of shit that goes on behind the scenes in the military that is fucking silly and kind of embarrassing when it all comes down to it, because at the end of the day, everybody has to justify their mission and everybody has to justify their budget. And because of that, some bad shit happens and some poor decisions get made. And in my personal tiny opinion that doesn't matter, that's part of the story of Operation Red Wings. So,
I agree.
Damn, that's interesting, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, that's definitely, I'm glad you cleared that up, because that's definitely something I was going to ask you. Just kind of like doing some research for this, I definitely came across multiple times that, the Marines plan the overall operation. So I'm like, so how the fuck do you get like Navy SEALs going up into those mountains? Like, I get collaboration. Like, I get that different branches of military talk to each other and work with each other. That's how defense forces work, right? I mean, you don't get a defense force unless they all communicate and work with each other. But, I thought that each branch plans their own missions. But
in general, and again, there's the term joint gets thrown around all the time. And a lot of joint operations are very successful. There's a lot of joint units, which, so joint basically means it's combining elements of different branches. So you have, anything from the granddaddy of them all, Joint SOCOM is like the, Special Operations Command of all branches of the military. So joint operations happen all the time, and a lot of times they're very deliberate, and it basically means like, okay, we're doing this operation, and we need a naval element. We want the Marine Corps to do this. We want the Army to support this way. We want the Air Force, and it's very deliberate, and it becomes joint because you're incorporating all these different units, and it's planned and it's deliberate. But then sometimes joint things happen because people are scraping they want their piece of the pie, and I hate to say it, but like,
very political.
It political and bureaucratic. Like, everybody's got to get their own. The Marine Corps has this saying, because the Marine Corps is kind of the ugly stepchild of the U.S. military forces, and I say that the Marine Corps has like the best propaganda in the world, So up there with the Navy SEALs. That's maybe why I have burr up my ass. Like the Marine Corps and the Navy SEALs are the two best propaganda machines. Like if you just watch movies and like commercials, you would think like we're pretty much the second coming of, the Spartan 300s.
Well, this movie might be one of them, right? Like
100%.
A piece of propaganda.
So that being said, like there's this great propaganda element, but the reality is the Marine Corps has a saying, which is America does not need a Marine Corps. America wants a Marine Corps, because throughout its history, there's been many times when there were budget cuts and that, people looked around and said like, do we need this fourth branch? Like, why don't what are we doing? Like, the Army has like infantry dudes and like the Navy has the ships. Like, why are we funding this fucking thing? And so the Marine Corps has this burr up their ass about proving themselves. And but every branch kind of does, So you look back over the last 20 years and you look at the Air Force's funding when we haven't done a single true air superiority mission. And boy, am I getting on a tangent. So reel me back.
I fucking love this. Just keep going, dude.
But the reality is, man, like you have big wigs in billions and billions of dollars involved. And, the guys, the Mike Murphys and Danny Dietz are fucking heroes, and they're out there to do whatever the fuck is asked of them. But a few echelons up, you have people that are like, hey, we got to make sure SEALs get our fucking mission proportion in Afghanistan. There's a reason, we got that cut. We got teams over there. We want to make sure we get, we want to make sure they're out there on tier 1 missions. We want to make sure we're getting HVTs, and it's kind of gross, but it is what it is.
Well, that's what's so interesting because, again, neither one of us, Zohab and I, any military experience. None of my family members really in the military. Maybe one or two. Yeah, there you go. I had like a cousin in the Air Force. I think my aunt and my cousin were in the Air Force. But beyond that, again, it's interesting because it's like if you want to watch this and you want to get information, and you really want to sink into like what exactly this true story is, there's things like that where, and it's the same thing with like when you get anything that's that big of, I don't want to say, I guess institution's not the right word, but it's the one that gets closest to me of when you think of something that's that big, as in the 4 branches of the military, like what are the ins and outs and what are the things that, that make that clock tick. That's what's interesting to me. It's not, watching a Michael Bay film and seeing somebody shoot submachine guns akimbo as they fly over a table. That's not really interesting to me. Maybe when I was like 10, but now I'm like, how does this beast run? Like, that's what's interesting to me is like how, then they say this when they're kind of setting up this op, and I'm not trying to jump ahead, but he's like, dude, there are a lot of moving parts. Yeah. No. And that's basically, he's like, there's a lot of moving parts. And it's like, you're fucking telling me, what did you just say? And I was like, I couldn't fucking follow half that shit. And I was like, I couldn't imagine this is one op in one, branch of the military. And you have so many of these going on with different branches. And it's like, man, that is a huge, like you said, Josh, when you get to that level, there's a lot of bureaucracy and there's a lot of stuff like that. And it's like, what are the ins and outs of that? And some people don't find that stuff interesting, but personally, I do. I would prefer a boring true story over like an action-packed bullshit. You know, that's what I find more interesting is the truth, because like you said, there's enough meat on this bone without having to dramatize a lot of this stuff. And I personally, as I get older, I love watching World War II documentaries. There's some really, really great ones. We just watched on Vietnam, but I can't remember what the name of it was. But you know, I prefer, even if it is a slower story, maybe not boring, but a slower story, I would prefer that to something that's like, you know, something that feels like you said, almost kind of like it's got a sprinkle of Call of Duty on it a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And like, I definitely agree with you that this briefing scene goes by real quick. This is, you know, like they're hitting the main points, but there was actually, you know, in like just doing some reading on this, apparently there was 5 phases of this, and this is, Josh, stop me if I'm wrong if you know anything that I don't, because I'm military splaining right here, right? Like that's
mil-splaining.
Yeah. I'll get into the phases real quick because it's, you know, there's a lot happening. But before I do, did you guys spot Dan Bilzerian in this movie?
Yeah, fuck that guy. Talk about,
you don't know Dan Bilzerian, Colin?
Maybe if I saw him, the name's not ringing a bell.
So, social media, I guess, if you want to call him a quote influencer.
I sure don't.
Who the fuck is this guy?
He's an asshole with a fucking beard who has like a bunch of guns and poses with hot chicks. Yeah,
that's him.
And is in this movie.
That's him. So apparently he entered the SEAL training program in 2000, but after several attempts did not graduate. He was reportedly dropped from the program for, quote, a safety violation on the shooting range. And, yeah.
What is his name again?
Dan Bilzerian.
Bilzerian, okay.
Bilzerian. There's a L in there somewhere.
Yeah, dinosaur?
He's a fucking douche.
He is a douche.
He's a dude who's made made a career, an extremely lucrative career out of looking like a badass.
Yeah, and playing poker games, I think. That's his
I think he's a big poker guy.
Yeah. But so Axe estimates that between 3 and 4 hours on this crappy shale terrain. Luttrell says there's poison oaks, snakes, etc. And like, this is interesting to me because it's important to remember that this is mostly unknown territory, like to these guys, as opposed to territory that is really well known by Shah's people, right? I mean, like, you got to remember this is kind of like you're going into a foreign land that has been traversed by these people for centuries. Right, they've grown up in these like mountains. They've been born and raised. They know them like the back of their hands. So you know, like even like when we get into the situation when we see the kid, you know, in slow motion, because of course it's slow motion, jumping from rock to rock, and like he knows like the layout and shit. It's just like, okay, so these guys know exactly what they're doing out here. That was really interesting to me.
I actually just looked up. Dan Bilzerian sued the producers of this movie.
Really?
His lawsuit stated he invested $1 million in the film in exchange for at least 8 minutes of screen. So you bought your way in. Okay. You didn't invest anything. You bought your way in. His lawsuit added he invested $1 million in the film in exchange for 8 minutes of screen time and 80 words of dialogue, but his role was later reduced to less than 1 minute and just one line. His lawsuit demanded 1.2. The original investment plus 20%. The lawsuit was later dropped. He reportedly generated $1.5 million in revenue due to the film's commercial success. That's interesting. I know. As soon as I saw the picture, I was like, "Oh, you mean the guy who looks like human growth hormone, like just that giant?"
To drop that guy off the back of a Chinook in a fucking Taliban-infested valley.
That's crazy. I can't believe he's just.
We're not coming back for you.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'd never heard of this guy, and now I'm like, wait, that's a thing? People just do that? And I was like,
he's got a giant following, huge following. Absolutely.
Yeah, like 32 million people. That's outrageous.
Yeah. Let me talk about Red Wings real quick, the 5-phase operation. So phase 1, shaping, that was this 4-man SEAL recon and surveillance team. And then phase 2 was the action on the objective. So a SEAL direct action team is to insert by MH-47 Chinook, followed shortly by Marines to capture or kill Shah and his men. That was after this initial phase. And then phase 3, outer cordon, apparently was supposed to be 150 Marines, along with the Afghan National Army. They're going to sweep the surrounding valleys for other suspected insurgents. Phase 4, security and stabilization. In the days after the first 3 phases, U.S. Marines and Afghan National Army soldiers and U.S. Navy corpsmen will provide medical care to the local population. And then phase 5, exfil. So, depending on enemy activity, Marines will remain in the area for up to 1 month and then depart the area. So, yeah, the Marines were supposed to do a lot of work here.
Right? Like originally, they were supposed to do all 5 phases. And like I said, that was the trade-off. When they asked for the support, they had to give up control of phases 1 and 2. So that's where it gets a little bit bureaucratic. And maybe that's where things get a little different, because the Marine unit in the area did know the terrain. Like the reason Ahmad Ghalib, the guy who rescued Marcus Luttrell, Pashtunwali is a real thing. The idea that you protect you protect a guest, that is a real thing. Mm-hmm. I experienced it to insane levels of frustration and also incredibly, like, it was amazing the way that they would treat you as a guest. And also they would harbor Taliban even if they didn't support them because they had this code. It was a weird thing. But that guy also, Ahmad Ghalib, was a big guy in this village, and he had a relationship with a local Marine unit. And that was part of the reason that he protected Luttrell, was he thought that the coalition forces were doing a good job. They had done shit in the area. So instead of having a unit... They built a school and stuff like that, right? Built school. They'd done, different humanitarian stuff. It's all part of, like, the whole counterinsurgency warfare. It's a big, long, messy, not that efficient process. But that was kind of why this thing was going to be planned, right? And it was to take out this guy and build security. And part of the trade-off was you brought in some guys who are excellently trained operators, but didn't really have any ties to the area, didn't know the ground, and were going in with very little support there. Yeah. I mean, that's wild, man. Like the Pashtunwali, I guess, tradition, if you want to call it, or belief, that is wild. I mean, I did a very, very minor, like, reading into it. I mean, obviously it's in the Quran and things like that. But apparently, if they went down another side, I think it's on the east side of the mountain, they probably would not have encountered a settlement that would have treated them that way. Like, apparently it was just in that valley, that one valley that they went down. Just from, like, minor reading that I did. Yeah, I think it was the Korangal Valley or something like that. But it was Korangal, yeah. That's where coalition forces had been operating for a while and had made some strides. Basically, because the whole thing is, that's counterinsurgency. You show up and you're trying to convince these people, like, hey, we're the good guys and we're going to do good things, and your government up in Kabul, they're going to be great for you, even though your country is a complete made up silly fucking show. Yeah, because they're here to, the military presence here ultimately is to prevent the Taliban from affecting elections, right? Like, that's why, that's the ultimate goal, I believe. Yeah, build governance. You want to make the government that we've set up in Kabul seem and be legitimate throughout the country. That's basically the mission at this point in 2005. Yeah. A spoiler alert. Petty officer. Doesn't end well. No, does not end well. 20 years later, pulling out. Man, hindsight is a great thing, isn't it? We meet Petty Officer Shane Patton. He does a sexy little dance. The dude that says "more neck" is Peter Berg. He's always in every one of his movies. Always makes an appearance. Yeah. We get this Frogman's Ballad. Now, I couldn't find anything backing up that this was a real thing. This sort of, like, creed that Shane Patton reads out here. Do you know anything about this, Josh? I couldn't find anything backing this up. I don't. again, wasn't a SEAL, so like I wouldn't presume to know about it. It seemed legit to me because like I've seen things like that, like creeds. You gotta be able to recite the hazing. Like that part of it does feel like legit to me. Like this part of the setup, although I would say as a movie, it doesn't do enough to actually establish any characters. It's like a decent job of like, hey, this is what like these dudes are kind of like. This is how their thing goes. This is the playful hazing. This is the you know, their kind of sense of humor and shit like that. And yeah, so the Creed thing, I was just like, yeah, sure. That sounds like a SEAL thing, I guess.
Sounds legit. Yeah. We get some really beautiful shots as the sun goes down. These are real Chinooks and Apaches flying through these valleys as we get to this insertion scene. I like that there's not a lot of CG in here. Unfortunately, the CG that is in here, it's very, you know, it does stick out. We'll get to it. But the actual, dude, I love the shots of the helicopters flying through the landscape, man. It looks amazing. It looks beautiful. I read an interview. We're going to get to these Night Stalkers now. Read an interview with Captain Matt Brady, who was one of the pilots of the Chinook, and he was part of what you mentioned, Josh, the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. Is it SOAR? SOAR? SOAR?
Yeah,
I guess
Special Operations Aviation Regiment, something like that. I think. Yeah. The Night Stalkers. Dude. They're the baddest motherfuckers that fly shit.
Well, I mean, two in particular, the Battle of Mogadishu and the mission to kill bin Laden, for like, if you want a couple examples. Apparently, as they were climbing the last 1,000 feet, the AC-130 that was providing overwatch radioed saying that they needed to leave their post because of a mechanical issue. And apparently, usually this is supposed to abort the mission, but Brady instead asked the AC-130 crew for one final report. They said that they have 2 military-age males, possibly armed, hanging around, and that the landing zones appear to be clear of potential threats. Brady made the call to continue the mission because he thought the AC-130 could make it back in time on station for the insertion. And they were, like, when they were landing to insert the team, they were surrounded by 100-foot tall trees. One of the ropes that the SEALs used to descend became tangled, and Brady made the decision to cut it. And when Brady and his crew returned to JBAD, he was confronted by Christensen about the rope, and Christensen actually asked them to go back and retrieve it in case, obviously, if it's found and, you know, compromises the mission. And, you know, Brady explains, we would have to drop a man down with a hoist in that hole of an LZ. Hoisting a man at that altitude on that kind of terrain at night is a dangerous operation. Once on the ground, they'd have to pick up the rope, hook it to themselves, and get hoisted back up. Hovering for that long over the same spot would burn the LZ and likely alert the enemy to the SR team's presence. We're talking about a rope, like one single rope, and like just the amount of like consideration that goes into it, dude, like to retrieve a rope.
Well,
I found that like
it probably wasn't to get the rope. It was to not indicate that, you know, we've been here. You know what I mean? Like people walk around, they see that rope, like the Afghans, there's a big thing that, like, you know, that they're primitive and that they're simple, and they're not dumb. They're smart, and they've been fighting people individually probably a lot longer than almost every American combatant that goes over there. Because before us, you know, before the Americans pushing that AO, maybe the British were there. Before that, a different part of Afghanistan was fighting them, whether it was Taliban or anti-Taliban. Before that, it was the Russians. So they're fucking smart. So you leave a rope and you know that somebody's been there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. The team pass each of the checkpoints. They're all named after beers. Budweiser, Corona, Heineken. They're starting to lose signal strength. Dude, how heavy, if you had to take a guess, how heavy do you think their equipment is? Like, God. This is just watching that, like just watching them carry all this equipment. Fuck. My back already hurts, man. I got a sore back.
Yeah, watching that stuff is like you get those like those guys who like sit shirtless eating Chinese food, like I could do that. And it's like, no, you fucking could. It's like fucking 60 pounds of shit. You're probably like, I mean, I don't know. I'm just guessing, but
yeah, they're
that's
probably
just,
60 to 80 pounds per guy.
God, dude. I worked at a restaurant for several years and had a guy that would work in the dish pit, and he was in the Air Force, and he just got a restaurant job and would work on the floor serving, and then would work in the back washing dishes and prepping and stuff. And he was from the Air Force, and he would wear one of those giant camel packs and just drink water back there. And I was like, we have cups and stuff, right? And he's like, no, I just do it. It helps me stay in shape, blah, blah. And I don't know if anybody knows how hot a dish pit gets in a restaurant, but it's like, dude, you're fucking sweating your ass off. And he was wearing this huge thing on his back. And I was like, you're fucking nuts, man. Like, there's a soda fountain machine 10 feet away from you. It's like with water in it. Like, it's not a big deal, but whatever. Hey, you do you. But even that thing, he let me put it on, and I was like, fuck, dude, you're walking around with this thing? I don't fucking think so, dude.
I once hoisted a big girl on my shoulders at a music festival, and I fucked up my
back. Love this. Tell me more.
Oh, that's good.
Tell me more, Zoeb. How did it turn out? Did you close on the objective? Did you pass Faceline Miller?
I was on a fucking stretcher after that. Like, I couldn't do anything.
I told you to stop talking to my wife. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, shit. Yeah, honestly, that's a fucking true story. That fucked up my back. My back has never been the same after that. Like, damn. You know what? Fuck. Yeah, and I like, that was years ago, and I vividly remember that. I was walking around looking like fucking the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Just like, shit, dude. Oh man. They use their scopes to look down at this little settlement. Are they okay? So this is a question that I had. Are they not worried about like glare or anything like that, like potentially giving away their position or anything, like, down their scopes? Is that not a consideration? Or
I don't know. That is interesting.
I think they showed, I'm not sure, at one point, I think they have like a lens cover on one of them that, most of it's taped over because you don't actually need like that much exposed. And they do, so as much as I shit on this movie, there's a lot of like random tactical details they do well. Like they're usually like in a pretty concealed position. Like you always see them scooting under. Like they're backing under rocks or backing under trees so that they're never under direct light. So that is one part of it. Then there's like a lot of movie shit where you shoot dialogue, you got to have people close together. Like they're way more grouped up than they would ever be. Not just movie stuff. Mm-hmm. Like there's no big deal. Like even movies that I praised to the end of the world, like Saving Private Ryan has scenes of like where they're patrolling and they're all just clumped up because you got to shoot people talking to each other because it's a movie. So, but yeah, they do a decent job. They do kind of like get out of the light in general.
Yep. They identify more than 10 guys. Murphy says that's a fucking army. Now, we can get into this. Like, depending on who you ask, in reality, the number of Taliban attacking is disputed. Apparently, in Luttrell's after-action report, he says that the Taliban force was about 20 to 35 guys. And in his book, during the briefing, the team was told that there was about 80 to 200 fighters in the area.
God damn.
But I mean, like, I was reading this interview with I think he's a Marine. Fuck, I closed the page. He said, I've been working with. He's like, I've been to that area so many times. There couldn't have been more than 12 people in that area, like at that time.
Yeah, that's what's interesting about a story like these as well. And I keep saying that word interesting, but it's just, it's weird because there's so many, especially when it's a story like this, it's hard to really verify, and obviously Luttrell, it's like, I'm not going to question his story. I wasn't fucking there, it's like, I have no idea, but it's crazy because when you have stories like this, you get a lot of like conflicting reports on people who were, also there. And like Josh said, no matter what happened, all these guys were badasses and all these guys were heroes and are heroes, but it's weird trying to kind of, I guess, kind of come to terms with like what might not be 100% accurate and versus what, and you hear one thing that's like, yeah, no, I heard that was made up. And it's like, no, that's totally true. It's like, well, fuck, man. It's like fucking fake news over here on all these, all these like based on a true story movies. That's why I hate anytime I see it based on a true story. I'm like, oh, fuck. I was like, that's not.
I'm always like, you're going to give me the broad strokes, fine. Like I always just go into a movie assuming, whenever it says, oh, based on a true story, that it's going to be broad strokes. And then I'm like, all right, after I walk out of this movie, I'm going to do some research on this. And then that's when I'll be like, okay, so this movie is either legit or it's bullshit.
Yeah, but here you have there is no true story. There's several different action reports, after action reports that say different things, medal citations that say different things, books that say different things. So the one thing I would say, and I put a lot of money on, not as many as that were in the movie. That's for sure.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
That's what's conflicting, and I hate that because it's like, man, I'm such a stickler for like, I want to know like the real story of like what went down. So, like you said, everything kind of, it seems like there's so many different layers of stuff, and they end up, contradicting themselves. It's hard to really kind of sink your teeth into like, no, that's exactly what happened,
Yeah. In Mike Murphy's Medal of Honor citation, the Navy said 30 to 40 enemies. So is that the Navy's, would that be the Navy's official position then? That there'd be 30 to 40 people there?
Kind of, yeah. You'll have that, and you'll also have an after action report, which is one of the main things. So when you write medal citations, as I have done for my Marines, you reference one of the things, you have to provide evidence. So if I say, I want to write this guy up for Navy Comm, I want to write this guy up for a Bronze Star, I have to provide support. And one of the primary methods of support are you're using after action reports. So in general, those two things are going to align pretty close.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Sorry.
This is why
I'm getting bogged down in all kinds of weird fucking details.
This is, dude, be as fucking specific and detailed as you want to be, dude. I fucking love it. Murphy decides that all four of them, leaves them way too exposed. So he and Luttrell move back about 25 yards. And then we get the goat herders, kid, teenager, old man. But the SEALs act quick and confidently, asking them to keep their eyes down and what the purpose of the walkie-talkie is. And then we get some debating. And this is...
Actually, I hate to say this. Before we get into this, can I get a bathroom break? Because I got to piss like a racehorse. Yes. Sorry.
Well, you know what? We are fucking running long. So let's do it.
I'm not used to doing a fucking podcast this long anymore.
We'll be back. Yeah, let's come back.
Hey guys, what's going on? Colin jumping in here in the middle. Just kind of let you know some stuff that's going on at Midnight Double Feature. First off, please stop by and rate and review us on iTunes. Let us know how we're doing. It helps out so much. It takes 5 seconds and it's free. So there you go. We would really, really appreciate it. Also, you can find us on our socials. We're on Facebook at Midnight Double Feature. We're on Instagram at Midnight Double Feature. We're on Twitter at MDF Pod. Please also join the group that we have attached to our Facebook page. It's called the After Party. Everybody's invited. That group has been really expanding, and we're really excited to see where it's going. We can also find our website, midnightdoublefeature.com. We got our merch there. If you want to know something, you want to find us on our socials, you want to see what all's going on, that's kind of like our main hub. That's really where to find it if you want it. We also have a podcast for Breaking Bad that we have going on. It's called Bad Crystal. It's an interesting show where I actually haven't seen any of the episodes of Breaking Bad. Joe has seen it like 15 times, and he's kind of leading me through it. I'm experiencing it for the first time with a veteran, and it's an interesting dynamic, and it's a lot of fun. And lastly, if you really, really, really want to support the show and really put all your cards on the table, we do have a Patreon. That's patreon.com/midnightdoublefeature. It's $5 a month. There's only one tier. You get all access to everything that we've got going on. We've got bonus episodes. We've got off the rails kind of stuff. We've got a lot of stuff that's not going to make it to the main page, and there's a lot more geared for Patreon kind of stuff. So we really hope to see you guys over there. Like I said, plans start at $5 a month and end at $5 a month. That's the only one that we've got going on. We really, really hope that you guys can join up there, and we will hope to see you soon. See you guys later. Bye-bye.
the goat herders. Oh shit! I almost forgot to say we're freshly squeezed.
There you go.
That's a fucking motto. But yeah, the goat herders arrive. Kid, teenager, old man. SEALs act quick. Murphy's forced to make an insecure satellite phone call to J-Bad, where he's transferred to Bagram because that's where Commander Christensen is. Dude, one little detail that I liked was just here, and I don't know how realistic it is. The hesitancy of Patton not wanting to wake up Christensen, and he's speaking to the other officer who's like, "That's Mike Murphy. You got Mike Murphy on the line.
Yeah,
go fucking go fucking wake up the commander." That shit was great.
I for real thought Mike Murphy for like the first half hour of this movie was Josh Hartnett, and I was like, "Oh, look at him! Good for that guy." I haven't seen him in a movie in a while.
Black Hawk Down.
Yeah, and eventually, but I kept looking. I was like, "Damn, that looks like." And eventually, I was like, "No, that's definitely not Josh Hartnett." I haven't seen him in a while, and I was like, "Oh fuck!" I called everybody. I love Ben Foster and Emil Hirsch, like Marky, and but I was like, "Oh, cool, Josh Hartnett. I've always liked him." And I was like, "That's not him, dude." After like 30 minutes, like, you fucking idiot.
No, Taylor Kitsch is a holdover from Friday Night Lights because I think that's where he got his start.
Oh, word.
Yeah. Murphy lays out the three options: let him go, tie them up, or terminate him. And Dietz and Axelson for the third option. And again, I don't know who's like the accuracy of which officer took which position. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if Dietz actually said, "Hey, we should terminate these guys," or Axelson was also like, "Hey, we should terminate these guys," and whether Luttrell was like, "Oh no, look, this is a fucking war crime. Let's not do this," because again, it's all off the basis of one guy, right? But also this might be movie bullshit, just showing us that this is a tough decision and there are different considerations to be made. It's definitely a tough call for Mike Murphy in any situation, no matter what was said. But again, I'm not sure what the accuracy of this was.
I don't know. I haven't even read Lone Survivor. If I haven't said that yet, fucking why am I on this podcast? I haven't read the book. But I'm pretty sure that this conversation is somewhat based on Luttrell or the whatever perspective Luttrell gave in Lone Survivor. I don't know, man. It doesn't strike me as realistic. Like, the rules of engagement are very clear, and there's never, you don't put shit up to a vote ever. Like, it's not how it works.
Right.
And the idea that the reality. So these guys, like, this happens all the time in Afghanistan because they know our rules of engagement, right? So they send out, and I don't know, I haven't read this, but like, it happened all the
Taliban do? The Taliban are aware of the rules of engagement?
100%. Okay. So this happened in my experience all the time, where they would send out locals, they would bribe them, threaten them, whatever, and they would send them out as spotters because they knew that a guy standing there watching a coalition patrol, even if they had a radio, we weren't cleared to engage because that was not hostile act, hostile intent. So you would literally see somebody watching your patrol with a radio. And yeah, if you wanted to, you could close the distance, you could detain them, you could do whatever. It would never lead anywhere because all they did is have a radio. All it ever ended up being was that, they would refuse anything, and then their village would show up and ask for them back, and it wouldn't matter. And it was just basically the Taliban would threaten and cajole, and or maybe they were sympathizers anyway, but they would just get people to be spotters or recon for them, knowing that we played by the rules, so we wouldn't kill them. So, there's a good chance, like, this insertion, this whole op, like, a lot of stuff I've read of the after actions were that the team was probably burned from the get-go. As soon as they inserted, the local forces probably knew that there were coalition forces in the area. So there's a good chance, and this is pure conjecture on my point, but there's a good chance that the guys that went up the mountain with the ICOMs, with those little radios, were just there to find them, and there might have been others that were out in the area. You couldn't kill them. You just don't. And, they were in a tough spot. I'm not saying it didn't cross their mind, but this comes down to the planning, the execution, the mission. This is where it varies from like Hollywood to just a failed op. As soon as you're compromised, you're gone. This op has failed. This op has failed. Get the fuck out. If they had comm failures, that's real world stuff that happens. Comms like that is a disaster all the time. But there should have been a fallback in place. There should have been a plan for extraction. There should have been, honestly, there should have been another unit that was inserted with them. That was the comm relay team that would have set up one terrain feature away with solid comms from a good comm point. And these guys would have short range comms. That's a failure in mission planning. But the reality for these guys, the last thing I think they should have done was cut them loose. Even if it was zip tie them up nasty and like leave them, do whatever you have to do to get time to extract, because the mission is over at this point. And God, I hate to play like backseat driver to a real world op with some badass dudes that are above my pay grade that ended up paying the cost for it. But the discussion of what to do with them is bullshit in my mind, personally.
Yeah.
Well, because I was kind of like, you don't have to let them go there. Like, you don't have to leave them. You can take them a little further up and give yourself time to get, it's not like you have to let them go here. I mean, you don't have to let them die. You don't have to let them go. Yeah. Give yourself, like Josh said, give yourself breathing room to get to where you need to go and give yourself time for that. So you can just take them out in the woods and let them go and be like, okay, cool. Well, now we've got time to get out of here. It's like, it doesn't have to be one or the other,
No, absolutely. And I don't want to downplay the weight of Mike Murphy's decision, because this is shit creek, right? And you're up it without a fucking paddle, right? I mean, like, this is like to make this decision as the team lead, because I agree with you, Josh. The voting shit is kind of bullshit. Like, I mean, like, that's
like fictionally, it's a great scene, but with the parameters of real world people, it's like, I don't know how I feel about that.
Why do you have a team lead if you're gonna call it up to a vote, kind of thing, right? I mean,
right.
I read this article from Brent Gleason, who graduated from the same Buds class as Mike Murphy, and like he was like talking about Mike Murphy and the decision. He's like, great leaders, there's a quote, great leaders like Mike learn to master emotional awareness, giving them the ability to avoid analysis paralysis and make decisions based on reason. Sometimes decisions need to be made quickly with the information available, and sometimes more data needs to be collected. Either way, great leaders tend to learn to minimize uncertainty and control as many elements of the outcome as possible. Mike and his team made the decision to uphold the rules of engagement and not murder unarmed men, and it cost them their lives and the lives of other teammates. But that's combat. Good decisions don't always lead to victory. I mean, like, that perspective, it really kind of like shines a light on like just how heavy, like, you can't, this is not a snap. It is a snap decision, but at the same time, it's not a snap decision. A lot of thinking needs to go into this.
Right. What I love as soon as Murphy's like, no, that's not what we're doing. We're doing this. And they all go, okay. Like, because it's like, again, this is not a democracy. What does he say in Reservoir Dogs? This ain't a goddamn fucking city council meeting. It's like, this is somebody giving you an order,
Right, exactly. They let the herders go, knowing full well what's about to happen. We see the youngest one navigating his way around the mountain, again, just reminding us that this is relatively unknown territory. They are better than you here. Like, that's my kind of like takeaway from this shot. They reach this false summit. Axe says this is a bad spot, and we can already see he's fucked up his leg. Back at Bagram, the team has missed 3 windows. Christensen calls his commander with an update. This dude's a fucking hard ass and reams Christensen out for the late update. I mean, like missing 3 windows and then kind of like notifying your commander. I feel like that is pretty late, right? Like that's because
I thought they said 2. Like, hey, after 2 is when people need to jump, and it was like, so we're on 3 now. I was like, I was kind of confused by that.
And this is where I'm. If they did it in the movie, if they covered it, and I don't know if Marcus talked about it in the book or in other things, but mission planning, you always plan for comm. your comm checks are a critical part of anything, and they do a good job with like the phase lines as they talk about it, the cores, Millers, Corona. So failed comm checks are a reason to abort a mission, and there will be, and I would say like, I mean, again, hey, not a fucking Navy SEAL. I hate to keep saying this, not a special operator, but you know, like done fucking like I've planned, you know, inserts for non-special operations units like this to like observe report, and a abort procedure or a abort requirement would be like, hey, 3 missed comm checks, you fall back to rally point Charlie, and that's it, mission over. So something should have been planned for that, and Christensen updating him late, why he's pissed off, I don't know. It's good dramatic effect in the movie. That's all I can really say about it.
Yeah, I had to Google what the shepherd guy says to him. I think he says something like, "By the morning, you'll be separated from your blood." And I was like, Jesus Christ! And like, apparently that's some kind of like saying, you know, it's some kind of like. I was like, Jesus, that's one way to put it. And I was like, that's fucking crazy. But apparently that's like a saying over there. Good morning to you too, sir. Yeah, right.
Really rolling out the welcome wagon here, I say.
Assalamu alaikum.
Oh, walaikum assalam. All right, dude, hearing the sentence from your team leader, "We're about to get contacted," would probably make my dick go up into itself. I'm just gonna straight up just say that, because this is wild, man. You know, like he goes up there, he sees the Taliban on the ridgeline again.
Oh, dude, the shot of the Taliban on the ridgeline though is like, you know, there's factual parts of this movie I don't like, and there's you know, there's kind of a weird feeling to it at points, but there's also awesome. There's some really great shots.
Yeah, movie-wise. Yeah.
Movie-wise,
yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
you know, I want to at least point that out, that it's like some of these shots, especially here coming up, you know, the firefight is definitely a Hollywood firefight, but some of these are like, dude, that is a hell of a shot when you're looking on the ridge and there's all those guys. Like, I kind of went like, oh, fuck, man. And I was like it gave me a little bit of anxiety when I first saw that. And I was like, they just keep fucking going. You know, it spooked me out a little bit. I was like, fuck. And it's just 4 guys, you know, goddamn.
No, totally, man. Like that silhouette shot of like them all just standing up there. Luttrell spots a Taliban who's in the process of lining him up with his AK. Luttrell fires the first shot of the operation. And again, this is 55 minutes into the movie, right? We're nearly at the halfway mark when we get the first shot fired. There's no music here. It's just the sound of gunfire, the team communicating with each other, and the sound of twigs snapping beneath their feet. They sustain multiple wounds. Danny first with the busted finger while making the call to base. This is, again, like you said, this is there's a lot of Hollywood shit here, but I like, you know, like if we look at this in terms of a movie, not a true story, I love the decision not to include this with music initially. Like yep. I like the natural sounds of the gunfire and them trying to communicate and shout to each other. It's a nice touch.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of stuff to love in these following sequences, and I think I've ragged on enough. We all have about like some of the Hollywoodized, but there's also there's shit in here they do really well. You know, the sound, the tenseness of it. You know, it is over the top of the number of combatants, and they're just dropping bodies left and right, and you know, there's guys falling all over them. But the way they move is really good. One of my favorite things is like a dumb thing that like somebody would get hung up on is like they always fire semi-auto. That's something Hollywood always fucks up. Like, thank God these fucking operators, they single shots all throughout the movie, because that's what you do. Like full auto shit, that's fucking movie stuff. The only people that fire full auto are machine gunners. You have them there. They're there to suppress the enemy. People that are trying to kill people fire semi-auto. It's like, so.
And conserve ammo, right?
Conserve ammo, especially as a 4-man team. They move well. Their equipment is great. Like down to the gloves, man. They're wearing this brand called Mechanics.
Yes.
Which is like one of the most popular like non-issued gloves for fucking not just special operators, but like infantry guys that want to be fucking high speed. It's a great brand of gloves. They're not military. They're actual mechanics gloves, but they're so popular. So like some of these details, they just get so fucking good. And there are times when like I'm completely caught up in it and just watching these guys do their thing. And even though they are like killing guys at the cyclic rate in a way that is definite Hollywood bullshit, they're getting hit. And that is something this movie on probably to a gross proportion does really well. And I did read something about like they actually, took stuff from autopsy reports of the injuries these guys sustained to show how many hits they took, how many bullet wounds, shrapnel wounds, falling down the mountain, stuff like that. The way it's shot is Hollywood, but the actual effects of it, and something that really drove home to me, they talk about it in the briefing. Luttrell stands up in the briefing, and if this hasn't been clear, Marcus Luttrell is a corpsman. He is a medic, okay? So in any other war, Marcus Luttrell is a non-combatant. His job is to patch up people. In the combat environment, America has found itself in against enemies that don't observe the Geneva Conventions. Corpsmen are combatants because nobody respects, or the people we're fighting don't respect that. But Marcus Luttrell is a corpsman. His job, his role is to mend the wounds of his comrades. But in this sense, he's just another combatant. He loses his med kit, but he talks about in the briefing, there's a slide that comes up and it shows like, all right, here's the tiers: self-aid, buddy aid, corpsman aid. And he says something, and this is like a random detail that I can't believe they fucking got done so well. He's like, the first form of first aid, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly how he says it, is to win the gunfight. And that is something that any good unit teaches you, is that you don't do anything with any wound until you suppress the enemy. Because the best way to save your friend is to stop the enemy from shooting at you. And that's what gets pounded into your head over and over in any good unit. And this is something that the U.S. military learned from hard lessons, was that like there were times early on that from combat training back in the States where like you tag somebody in training and you say, all right, you're hit, you're a casualty. And people would lay down and be like, oh, I'm a casualty in training. But what they were finding was that in the real world, people were getting hit in combat and going, oh, fuck, I'm hit, and lying back and doing nothing. And there were these studies and like this total change in training happened where, hey, if you're hit in training, you keep fucking fighting. Because if you're hit in combat, you keep fucking fighting. And you do not start treating a casualty until you are winning that gunfight, or you're winning the gunfight enough for somebody to get that person away. So if you are hit, you keep fighting. And that is something this movie does in ethos, in actual technical detail. They talk about it. You're never out of the fight. It's like a resounding thing they talk about at the end of the movie. It's one of my favorite parts about this movie is that they keep referring to us. You're never out of the fight, and the fact that in the situation they keep getting hit and they keep fighting. Sorry, I just went on a wild.
No, that's cool.
No, that's cool. It's good, man. Like I like that we're finally giving this movie some praise.
Good job, Peter.
Because that stuck out to me too. I read that he was a medic, but I mean, like, there's not that many times where you actually see him patching people up. I mean, like, yeah, he tends to Axelson a bit later when it's just the two of them. But yeah, I was a bit surprised. I was like, wait, hold on, like he's not walking around with like a med pack or anything like that, and actually patching these guys up. So yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting perspective.
He does say at one point, like later on when he's working on Axe, he says, "I lost my med pack."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
There's also a line in this. I worked with a guy in a warehouse once a long time ago. And, it was summertime. It gets real hot. And, we wear shorts and tank tops and stuff. And I noticed, because he had cut the real long loop, under the armpit. And he had 3 or 4. It looked like somebody had burned him with a cigar, 3 or 4 on the side. And I was like, and I was like, if you don't mind me asking, because we were buddies, I was like, you don't mind me asking, what was that? And he was like, actually, I was out front of a strip club in Nashville and I got shot 4 times. It's like, oh my God. And he was like, I was waving to somebody and the next thing I know, there's a drive-by and it's just blah, 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 and I was like, holy shit. And he was like, yeah, he's like, it's not what they think. And there's a line in here that the guy says, it burns. And that's exactly what that guy said to me that I was working with. He's like, it fucking burned. He's like, that's one thing I did not think that would be like. So when they said that in this movie, I was like, obviously not something I've ever personally experienced, but I was like, wow, that's fucking crazy. I know somebody who said that exact same shit,
Mm. And I also imagine a strip club in Nashville might be as dangerous as the Congo Valley in Afghanistan.
Yeah, you know what? You don't want to go to Rusty's or Deja Vu? What's their other one? There's a couple of
sections for days.
Oh, shit. I don't know what you're talking about, man. I like saying candy. I think that's the name.
With a K? Why?
With an I?
With an I. With 2 eyes.
Yeah, with 2 eyes. Oh, that's good.
So they try pushing left, but the left is covered. Right is also no good. They have nowhere to go but backwards, which is down the mountain. Luttrell said in an interview that the 2 scenes of them falling, as brutal as it is, the movie apparently made it look glamorous because this was apparently a fucking shit show. These guys, dude, and I was impressed with the way the movie did it. Like just showing the detail of how damaged these guys are by the time they reach the bottom of both falls because they fall twice. But yeah, Luttrell's like, man, I thought that every bone in my body was shattered after that. After I fell, it was fucking crazy. I visibly just wince every time I see this. Every time I see them fall.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely do a good job of. I mean, it's brutal. It's a brutal movie to watch.
Yeah, yeah. It's not a fucking. We didn't even mention that. This is no walk in the park.
No, and not just. It's not a movie where people die. It's a movie where you watch. I mean, more than almost any movie I can think of, where you watch your protagonist just get torn the fuck apart. I mean, it's
right,
and these guys did, and whether it came out exactly like it's portrayed on screen, like I said, unfortunately, they do a very good job, from what I've read, of actually portraying the wounds and the injuries they took in real life on screen, which is fuck.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 things that scare the shit out of me with this scene. And the one is just looking up into the tree line and you don't even see people. All you see is just these lights from the flash. And I'm like, dude, that's fucking terrifying. You can't even, I couldn't see shit. Maybe I just have terrible vision. And I was like, dude, I can't fucking see anything when they're cutting, up to where the top of that ridge is. But also Ben Foster, I can't remember what injury it is. There's a couple, I think he gets a couple of them, but his eye slowly, as the scene goes on, you can see it start to swell and swell and swell and shut. And it was, I mean, it's disturbing, like Josh said, as accurate as that is and how disturbing that is, but it's also that attention to detail where it's you see the progression of it is you can tell they took that very seriously, and I appreciate that.
Totally, dude. They managed to regroup here very briefly. They're filling their wounds with dirt. Danny's the young one up there from memory. I think he's how old is he? 22, I think at this time. I can't remember, but he's talking about how fast they were. He's just I didn't even know they were that fast. And he's looking at his own blood. He's such vivid reds. Axe, and then it's fucking wild, dude. Axe then pops smoke and they jump off another cliff, but not before Danny's hit while Luttrell is carrying him, leaving Danny trapped at the top of the cliff. Briefly, we can just get into this. So apparently Luttrell did accidentally swing him into a bullet when Luttrell was about to fall, but the bullet penetrated the back of Dietz's head and killed him instantly. Dietz's dead weight came as a surprise to Luttrell, and as a result, he fell down the edge of the mountain with Dietz's body, and was severely injured. Yeah.
God, that's fucking awful.
That's fucking wild, dude. Mike Murphy's sacrifice. He dropped the satellite phone after being shot more than 14 times. This is real life, by the way. But picked up the phone and finished the call while being shot. Apparently, he signed off saying thank you.
Damn.
And then continued fighting from his exposed position until he died from his wounds. And then 4th of July, Dietz and Murphy's remains were found by a group of American soldiers during a combat search and rescue operation and returned to the U.S. 9 days later, on 13th of July, Murphy was buried with full military honors at Culverton National Cemetery. Dietz was buried with full military honors at Fort Logan National Cemetery. Sorry.
Yeah, that honestly, I'm glad you because I honestly feel closure in you saying that, because then I was watching this, I was like, what? I mean, I guess they go back, I hope they do, but it was, it's not, obviously they're not going to have a scene of them flying in and taking them, away. But I was like, I wonder what happened here at the end of that. So I'm glad you brought that up. I was kind of curious.
They recovered.
About that.
They managed to recover all three. Axelson's body was found later, not on the same day. As
they recovered all of it, including the ones that went down on the Chinook.
Yeah.
Oh wow,
yeah.
That's wow.
Yeah. After receiving the call, Christensen wastes no time. The two Chinooks are wheels up from Bagram with members of SEAL Team 10, the Marines, and SOAR. In reality, apparently they were delayed for several hours, but then were allowed to go with 2 Black Hawks and 2 Apaches. Axelson's taken a bullet to the head. That fucking wound, dude. I remember seeing that in the theater, and I nearly fucking threw up. That hole in the back of his head. Jesus.
Yeah, well, that's what I was wondering. Like, is it something that grazed him, or was that like direct? I couldn't figure out. Was that direct contact, or did it just graze him, like going behind him, or what? Because I was like, oh, dude, you were shot in the fucking head. Like, how are you still up? Like that. I was like, is it just a graze or something?
They didn't say, and I'm sure no one knows, but that sequence when he's like, they fucking shot me in the head, and Mark's like, yeah, they did, buddy. That and Axelson's death, like when he's tapped out against a tree and they're slowly
Jesus.
like pop, boom, headshot. Yeah. Again, no reason to say this. I don't know anything about what happened, but that shit struck me as like some of the most realistic feeling shit. Like as far as the way they went out, like, God, I can't even imagine. But the wounds these guys took and kept running through, they would know.
Adrenaline.
Yeah.
Man, Axelson's death. We're moving up. We're moving up here a little bit, but man, like that was incredibly tough to watch. I think, like with the labored breathing and like Peter Berg's decision to, not have the first shot or even the second shot hit him. Like, it's that third shot that like hits him and finally executes him. There is something incredibly realistic about that, and it's incredibly unsettling, dude. Like, it's fucking holy shit.
Me and my fiance were watching it, and just watching the first shot is far away, and then the second one gets closer, and you're like, dude, this is fucking terrible. And it's one of the few times I watched, because I can handle, I grew up on like a lot of horror movies and stuff like that, but knowing the real world, how accurate it is something where it was like, dude, like it's torturous just seeing that thing get closer, and I was like, that's fucking awful, man. That's one of the parts I just was like, I don't know if I can handle that. That's awful.
Do you want to know? Okay, look, I know we're pivoting here. You want to know what gave me a fucking boner in this movie?
I really do. I really do. Because I'm fully flaccid right now. I couldn't be less aroused.
Are you ready? Because you're about to be fucking hard as a rock.
Okay.
Christensen asking the SAW pilot whether it can be put on the ground without the Apaches, and the pilot's response: "We'll do what we have to do to get you on the ground to your men." I don't know if it's realistic. I don't. At that point,
that shit supposedly is true. that pilot disobeyed his directives.
Damn. Hold on, I'm gonna get some tissues and rub one out. There.
Tragically, because they're all fucking dead, but they were not supposed to. From the after action I read, which was published in the Marine Corps Gazette, they were not supposed to insert unless they had positive ID on the team. And that pilot made an on-call decision that he was going to fucking put them in. And tragically, it cost the entire, crew and passengers their lives, but fucking don't fault them on it for a second. That's...
No. Yeah, absolutely.
Good shit.
That's a very human decision, Like I couldn't say. I mean, you want to say like, yeah, I do the exact same thing, but it's like I don't know what I would do in that position. But it's like what I hope I would do.
Totally, dude. Just that line, man. Like, we'll do what we have to do to get you on the ground to your men. Like, I was like, holy shit, that is fucking that is awesome. Axel and Luttrell get separated, and then they hear the sweet, sweet sound of relief. Right, the booming sounds of those twin rotors. This is such an amazing moment in the film, and it might be one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Not the shoot down, but the really brief moment of Ben Foster. Like, Ben Foster makes this scene for me. It's his reaction to seeing the helicopters. There's something like really like legitimate about him. Like, what I think is legitimate, or like him just looking up and just shouting. You can, like, when he shouts yes, you can hear him, like, you can hear the relief in his voice, man. Fucking, he's such a good actor, man. I fucking love Ben Foster. Also, I've been listening to this track on the soundtrack all week. Like as these fucking Chinooks just fly in, man. It's fucking awesome. But apparently the RPG in reality struck the bottom of one of the rotors. It didn't go right through into the cockpit.
Right, like yeah. I figured. I was like, that's, I don't know about that.
Yeah, that's some movie bullshit. But unfortunately, yes, it did kill all 8 of the 160th Army Special Operation of aviators and crew and all 8 Navy SEALs that were on board, including Christensen, which is tragic as shit, man. And then we get Axelson's death after that, shortly after that. And then the Apaches and Black Hawks arrive a bit too late and return to base to refuel. They've got nothing on infrared. Yeah, man, this is such a demoralizing moment if you're Luttrell and Axelson,
Yeah, well, it's 2 times. It's like, you see the first set of the helicopter show up, and then one of them gets shot down, the other one goes, and then another shows up, and they're like, nah, I mean, we can't find it, we got to refuel. It's like, fuck, man. That's like having the rug pulled out from under you twice, back to back. Like, that sucks.
Right, exactly. Luttrell passes out. When he comes to, he's setting a broken bone in his leg, which is great. This man, this is fucking. I can't with this. I'm not even like that squeamish. I'm not a squeamish guy. Like, I can watch because I know it's a fucking movie, right? Like, I know that this is not Mark Wahlberg fucking setting his own bone, but like, there's just something about this, man. Like, just how long they let it go.
It fucking hurts so bad. Fuck. Oh man. Oh,
hey, someone give me a Band-Aid, okay?
God, come on.
Guys, I'm really fucking hurt.
I'm fucking so hurt over here. Whoa.
I'm surprised I haven't mentioned it up until now. I think Mark Wahlberg is horribly miscast in this role. I don't love him.
No?
I'm kind of... There's moments... I think his best moment is when I think when they first find him in the water after all of this is going down and he has that grenade. And I was like, whoa, that's probably some of the best shit I've seen Mark Wahlberg do acting wise. And you can just the fear and just the fuck you, like he's like, what did he say? If I don't go home, you don't go home either. And I was like, fuck, man.
That's the part for me. He sells that part in the hut when they're in the hut, and he's just like, he's fucking got the eyes like that. That to me that's my favorite Wahlberg moment in the movie. But again, I don't know. There's something a little too, like you said, Josh, Hollywoody about it, right? I mean, like, I would have liked an unknown or someone less of a movie star to portray Luttrell. But
yeah. I mean, I guess I kind of agree with you, Zoe, but it doesn't really matter in the movie that we watch. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, well, not to put words in your mouth, I don't have any problem with Mark Wahlberg's performance in the role that he plays. I would have rather seen a different role, and if I saw a different role in a different movie with a different character, I would rather that character was an unknown because I wouldn't want any.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
yeah.
But,
that makes a lot of sense because it's more of an action movie and less of a less of a look at a tragedy.
Yeah.
It makes sense for an action star to be playing Luttrell. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not saying Wahlberg's anything amazing in the movie, but I thought he was fine for the role that he was playing in this. For me.
Mm-hmm.
In a movie that I said was kind of fucking bullshit.
Let's talk about Muhammad Gulab Khan. So this is his savior.
The fucking real hero of the movie. By the way,
let's talk about Muhammad Gulab Khan, okay? Because, he was kind of like, he got the short shrift, right? I mean, I read an article, this is the same Newsweek article where I quoted the Marine who talked about, who disputed the number of people like Taliban that were out there. Apparently, all he kind of like got out of this, like, he was on a kill list, apparently. Like, the Taliban put him on a kill list. They were fucking harassing him. Dude, like he let me have a sorry, this is a bit later on in my notes, so I just kind of lost it. Gulab actually had a Taliban bounty on his head. In 2014, Gulab was asleep in his room when a bomb exploded by the front gate of his home. The blast woke the children who ran to a neighbor's house for safety while Gulab and his wife grabbed their Kalashnikovs and climbed onto their roof. Under a canopy of stars, this is Newsweek, so this is why it sounds so dramatic. Under a canopy of stars, they squatted behind a barricade and fired towards the gate, their bullets sparking in the darkness when they hit stones. Taliban returned fire, but Gulab and his wife had the high ground. The standoff lasted for hours until, with daylight approaching, the militants retreated and Gulab and his wife climbed down, still terrified. After this, he was rewarded with a job, I think, on a military base. But there was no extraction or anything like that to get them out. I know that now he does now live in Texas with his children. He lives in Fort Worth. Yeah. So they did eventually manage to get out, but it's still kind of like, obviously this shook him. Like this rescue of Marcus Luttrell changed his life.
I read an account a while ago, not in preparation of this podcast. And I was trying to find if it was legit or not, and I kind of forgot to dig into it more, that he was on the helicopter that evacuated Luttrell. So I don't know if that's legit or not, but I did read at one point that he was brought out with Luttrell. But yeah, I mean, he saved his life, but not in the fucking Hollywood bullshit way we saw. Yeah. Like, this is one of my biggest complaints about the movie. It's bad enough up to now, the Hollywood shit that they've layered onto it. But now we have to make a running gun battle with the Taliban.
Yes, this is something we can talk about because this is fucking
silly. This is just pure slapdick shit.
Right. I want to talk about this because it's that first kind of they did find him. Apparently they did find Luttrell and they were harboring, and it was Shah. Apparently it was Shah who was down there, who found the hut that he was being sheltered in. And them pointing their guns and stuff and in a standoff, and I don't know if they actually pointed guns, but Shah was outnumbered and he's like, all right, look, I'm outnumbered right now, whatever, you're safe for now. That was apparently legit, but them coming back and the rescue happening while this village is being stormed by the Taliban, that's the part you're talking about, Josh, right?
Yeah no, it was, yeah, so they showed up and they pushed their way into the village. They were armed. They beat the shit out of Luttrell in a room, it kind of as we see later, but it didn't become some running thing and Luttrell defending himself with a knife. That never happened. Gulab was the one who pushed them out, and it was all words. It was him saying, get the fuck out of my village. This is our guest. We are going to kill you. And Shah saying, if you do this, you're dead, your family's dead, like everything you know is dead. Like that's heroic enough. Like why do we have to invent this other shit and like make like Marcus Luttrell win a knife fight and like this running gun battle as coalition forces close in with the QRF? Like
it's because we want to see the AC-130 fire their shells, dude. Come on.
Yeah, well, that is fucking. You want to talk about?
That was pretty fucking.
You want to talk about our interaction?
I was like,
that shit is dope.
That's fucking cool, man.
Come on.
Yeah, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but it's like, you
at the end of the movie,
we're talking about this.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure, because basically at the end, where they're having this shootout and whatnot, because when you watch this whole, when we had our original 4 main characters and just see them, especially with Emil Hirsch, you see that guy take the wedding ring, and it's like, dude, watching Ben Foster die and watching these characters die, that when that helicopter comes in, I think it's a helicopter, I might be wrong, but it just switches to that black and white, and they just and like, it's like, oh, it's like, God, awesome. The movie is, because I think the only way that I can look at this as a film and try to be objective about it is if I think like this is not a piece of fiction, but if I can think of it as a piece of fiction, it helps me try to critique it as a film and be objective about it, knowing that the story is bullshit anyway. So like that is one of the parts that it's effective as a movie, as when we see these guys. And, of course, they get driven off and they come back. But when they come back and they're just fucking them up, and it's like, dude, it's the relief and that's the release that we've been wanting and needing really the whole movie, is to just finally get to a point where it's like, okay, it's done. Like, we're done. You're safe. There's no way anything can fucking happen from here. You're good. And that's the part that I do love. It's just the kind of just the ease of everything. Like, okay, they've got him. He's getting out of there. Like that kind of feeling, about it. It's effective in that way, but yeah, a lot of this stuff is very like, watching Mark Wahlberg, it's like the guy who's in Transformers, it's like, it does kind of like, because you come in when it's a star, Tom Cruise or Mark Wahlberg or, The Rock or somebody, I do kind of come in with a bias of like whether or not I like their stuff. So I would have loved, like, if they'd have had Ben Foster as the lead, dude, I think this would have been a hell of a lot better, because I love Ben Foster. I think he's a much better actor than Mark Wahlberg. But I think some of this stuff at the end when they take him into town and they take him into the village is really some of his best stuff in the whole movie.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. And to use Josh's kind of like perspective, this is a fitting conclusion to the movie that they've been making up until this point, right. I think. Like if you're making an action movie, action movies, by design, need to finish with an escalated climax, right? Like something that I did last night.
Wait a second. Stop. All right. Was this the chick from the concert or a different one?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, we reconnected after my fucking back.
Well, I hope you were on the bottom then, for God's sakes.
I was in a wheelchair.
Lady.
There's always a bottom.
But no, like, yeah, this is like if you're making an action movie about the story Lone Survivor and you're not making it this realistic story that it should have been, then this is a fitting conclusion, right? This is the Hollywood conclusion that I guess people who don't know the story would probably want to see. Because, like you said, Colin, it is satisfying to see the Apaches come in and just blow the fucking Taliban away. It's incredibly satisfying to watch the AC-130, tilt over and start firing its fucking shells.
Yeah.
Which again gives me a fucking heart on every fucking time. It's fucking beautiful. And then you like because it's the Army Rangers, right? It's the Army Rangers working with the Afghan army that apparently rescued him, right? I think that was the force that rescued him. Might be wrong there.
I'm not sure. Actually, I haven't read. I would imagine. I think it would be Marines, because it was still under the Marine Corps, under Marine Command, because they, fucked up this whole mission in the first place.
Right. Let's go get them out.
I don't think Rangers were involved, as sexy as they are.
Oh, okay. Right.
I would imagine this rescue op was the same guys. So Navy SEALs, Marine Corps, and 160.
You don't want to get another branch involved.
Yeah.
that's not a knife, it's a fucking duck. That always gets me.
That's a good line.
That always gets me. I don't know why. It's the delivery.
Well,
he goes to
Wahlberg moment. It's a good Wahlberg moment.
He goes to cut the duck's head. I was like, no. He's like, yeah, fuck, I'll kill him for you.
Oh shit! But yeah, Luttrell's rescued. He's wanting to take Gulab with him, but I mean, obviously that's not going to happen, right? I mean, like this is. I don't know what kind of headspace he's in after this whole ordeal, but that was never going to happen. They're not going to allow this guy onto the aircraft. Like it's just never in no world.
Yeah, well, that's what, because like what Josh was saying, I was like, just looking at an article that was like fact versus fiction, and it's like in Luttrell's book, he says they both got on the helicopter, and it's like, we'll put that in the movie, dude. That'd be awesome. Like I'd love to see that.
He's the one that said it. Okay.
Yeah, apparently. I mean,
I read it somewhere.
It's some of these articles. I'm not, again, I'm not 100% on them. I haven't fact checked these, but yeah,
I don't know if I buy it. I mean, like, and like again, like that might be disrespectful to say, but
the movie's reputation is kind of spotty. That it's, can you really be faulted for being like, it's like, no, if it's true, hey, that's awesome, but I don't blame you for having like a pinch of salt with that,
right? I'll tell you what, though.
The fucking guy did enough, though.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Wait, do what? Sorry, you guys got out for a second.
Gulab, man. The guy did enough. He's as heroic as the fucking Navy SEALs in this movie.
Right.
Like, not in the bullshit way that the movie actually portrays, but in reality, this guy was a relatively uninvested village elder who had decent relations with like the local coalition forces, but he literally fucking took this guy under his wing and told the Taliban and Shah to go fuck themselves, despite their death threats. And like, it's not enough for Hollywood. Like we have to have a big running gunfight at the end of the movie, because how can you have a 45-minute gunfight and then end the movie with words? Like
with words. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. With a conversation. Yeah.
Nope. Well, and there's something interesting too, and again, even though depending on the level of, I guess, accuracy, that, the four of them deciding not to kill those three. It's like, we're not going to do that. That's against the rules. We're not doing it. And then in turn, them coming after them and tearing apart an entire village for one guy. And I was like, that is so crazy when you look at like the weight of that kind of on the scale is like they, all four of these guys were it's like, letting these guys go did nothing but bring them disaster. And it's like, but what's interesting is seeing them kind of, I don't know, make that kind of, I'm trying to think of make that decision to do that and make the correct moral decision at no benefit to you. It's no benefit. It's nothing but cost. So it's the same thing at the end where he's like, you have no benefit by housing, this guy. There's nothing there, but it's just your moral, tradition to do that. And I thought that was really interesting, but also seeing the people that you refuse to kill, I mean, tearing apart a whole village to get one fucking dude. I was like, that's kind of crazy,
Yeah. Tell you what though, the tribute scene fucking hits me in the feels every time.
Yeah.
It does.
Do that
like
shit.
The song might be a bit much, but
do that shit right. I mean, I got nothing to say about that.
Yeah.
But
Lindsay, my fiance, she's a huge Bowie fan. And I think this is Peter Gabriel's cover. I think it's the one they played in Stranger Things when they find Will's body in the quarry in the first season. Because that first season, I was like, oh my fucking God, dude, when they find Will, I'm bawling my eyes out. And of course, right when this movie ends, and it's not just the four guys, it's all the dudes. And I was like, it's a great way to end the movie with just no bullshit. Like, hey, these are the people, there are their names, these are their faces. I love it.
Yeah, I really appreciated this. This was, sitting there in the theater, a really, really vivid memory of me just like, honestly, like about to fucking break down, dude. I'm just like, oh shit. Like, and I didn't know these guys. Like, like that's just it's just the power of like,
Zoeb, can I ask you something?
Yeah. Hit me. Yeah, please.
What's it like watching a movie like Lone Survivor as a non-American? Because this is a movie that clearly, I mean, fucking from day one is catering towards an American audience and our sacrifice and our heroes and this shit. Like, I don't know. Does it, do you look at these people as just people? Because it's hard to get away from the fact that there is something going on behind the scenes, I think, of the creation of this movie. Like, of glorifying something, whether or not you agree with the politics, but like, you know, there's clearly a little bit of a war porn thing going on. So as a non-US citizen, you fuzzy little foreigner, I want to ask you that. So Zoeb.
No, yeah, absolutely, dude. It's a good question. I think it's not that it's relatable. I mean, like, I don't relate to these guys who, you know, found themselves in this situation. I don't relate to, you know, the way they become the hard men that they did. I mean, you know, like, there's no way. We are not the same people at all. Like, even if I was a US citizen, I mean, like, there's just no overlap whatsoever. But I think there's something about the situation and survival that really kind of like makes it makes a really good kind of like entry point. Like for anyone, like, you know, like for anybody who's watching this movie, no matter where they're from, no matter where they live, the situation that these guys were put in, that moral decision at the beginning, well, when they let the three guys go, it's easy to ask yourself that question, and it's hard to make that decision. Like, you can like easily ask yourself, hey, what would I do in this situation? Right? I mean, like, that is the thing. But then, like, also there's because, like, you know, I've shown my dad is not the most religious person, and, you know, we come from we have a Muslim background, right? So like watching movies like this, or, you know, other films where you know, Muslims are like mowed down by the millions, right? Like, I mean, it's tough for me, it's not that big of a deal because I'm not super religious. My dad is a little bit more religious than I am.
Sure.
So I watch a lot of, I mean, like every movie that I've probably ever seen, I, you know, watched with my dad as well, like when I was younger. So showing a movie like this to my dad, I'm always kind of like hesitant on, because it's like, fuck, man, like I don't know what he thinks about this. Like, I don't know if he's like approaching this as like it's American made, you know, like it's just propaganda. They're just trying to, like, you know, sully the religion, whatever. But like, that's the thing about religion, right? People have their own like interpretations. People have their own kind of like, you know, whatever. But like my dad's always been like a, you know, this is a movie that we're watching kind of thing. Like, you know, like it's not the real life situation. It's not what happened. Patriots Day was another one that we watched, and Patriots Day with the two guys that perpetrated that bombing was a little bit more heavy-handed with its kind of like Muslim, anti-Muslim-isms.
Those right? Bad guys, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the guys that look like me. Yeah. So, you know, that one was I remember a really tough one to watch with my dad, because he's like, he wasn't getting angry, but he was like, this is kind of fucking annoying. You know, like, it's like, that's, I don't know about that. I don't know about this. Like, you know, I think there is a line in that movie where it's like, oh, next stop, New York. And it's just like,
God.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So, right.
Really?
Exactly. So, yeah, there is.
I haven't seen the movie. I think I'm not gonna lie.
When they commandeer that Asian guy's SUV, I think it's like they commandeer like one of like someone's SUV, and they have the Asian guy in there, like they kidnap him, and they ask him to put the GPS onto New York, like get us a direction in New York. So it's just like, I don't know, guys. I don't know. But like, I've always been into military films, war films, because I understand the situation that they're in. Like, you know, like I understand the history of it. I understand that. I'm not saying that I identify with it. I'm not saying that it's, you know, I relate to it or anything like that, but I get it. Like, you know, especially this situation with the moral quandary that they're in. That's a long ass answer to your question, Josh.
No, dude, I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big question.
Yeah.
It's a big answer for a big question too. You know, like you have a very, just as Josh has a unique perspective from his past and his history, you have a very unique perspective on, you know, A, your religious background, and then B, not being an American citizen. Like, that's very, I didn't even consider that. I've been doing a fucking podcast this guy for 2 years. I didn't even think about asking that.
And Colin's just glad to be here.
Right, yeah.
All right, well, as the new co-host of the Midnight Double Feature.
No, shit. But yeah, look, man, that's Lone Survivor, dude. That's
fuck yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I'm not even going to say that at the end of the episode. That's Operation Red Wings.
Yeah, there you go.
Is probably the better cap on that, because again, I chose this movie and I was like, well, let's try and use this as a way to navigate around this operation, because there's just so much that went wrong with it. There's so many kind of like little details, intricacies. And you know, I was like, Josh, I don't feel comfortable doing this episode without you because, I don't know, like I think, you know, your military expertise, and I think just the way that you, navigate your way around, saying that this
talk
movie's a piece of
in
shit.
circles forever. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I think it's been awesome, dude, and it's been fucking fantastic having you on, dude. Really appreciate it.
It's been fun. It's been a blast for me. I really appreciate you guys having me on. I have 2 closing thoughts for this movie. If I can throw them out there.
Yeah, please. And then Colin, you can go because you didn't get opening points.
Yeah, Colin, you can finally say something about the movie of the podcast that you're a co-host of. But first, I will. So I have 2 things to close this movie after everything else that I've already fucking rambled about. One is like, what a fucking waste, man. Like, everything this movie had an opportunity to do, and we didn't really deliver anything that's anything more at the end of the day than basically like war porn. And yes, did we honor these 4 guys? I think we did. I think the movie does. But like, do we honor any other person that serves? Do we honor like people that sign up and fucking die in any of these conflicts in Afghanistan or Iraq or Syria? Is there any thought to like the fact that any of these things can go tits up? Every operation can go tits up and kill fucking 2 or 4 or 18 people for what? And I'm not saying that as an anti-war guy or whatever, but just like, this should be a movie that is about showing people the cost. That is about like, this is what it takes. One fucking thing goes wrong, planning gets a little mixed up, and all of a sudden we have 19 dead Americans because we're fighting this war that you don't give a shit about, that you don't fucking know about, that you don't care about, that you don't stay informed about. Like, we're there. These people are there. Show the fuck up, like, learn about it, educate yourself, and understand that this shit is happening. And like, the one thing goes wrong, and like, these are the costs. And this could be a movie that could so easily do that. That could take a simple mission and show, but instead it kind of does this like glorifying thing as if this is a one in a kind operation, this incredible, rare Operation Red Wings. It was just a regular mission.
Yeah.
A million of these missions have happened. So we come away from it as like a legend, a fable, and we don't learn anything. We don't, as an audience, as a country, as a culture, we don't get anything out of it. And we also don't get anything out of the people that we're killing and the people that we're fighting and the people that we're protecting. Another fucking huge waste. Muhammad Ghalib was a fucking hero, but also a very multifaceted character. Like somebody that was a leader in this, like who put his life on the line, his family's life on the line. And yet, like, it's just fucking downplayed in such a silly way where he protects fucking Marky Mark. And like, man, just like missed opportunities left and right. And it's a bummer. I watched this movie and I'm like, what a fucking high budget, well produced, well executed, complete fucking bummer.
Well put.
That's a good way to put it, man. Follow that up, Colin.
This is one of the best movies ever made. No, I'm just kidding. No, I try to think of what is the intent of this movie. I think that's an important thing to ask. Is like, is this something where is it getting, like Josh said, kind of, is it getting swapped, like caught up in this like war porn, hurrah, rah, rah, like America type thing? Like with movies you see, like I remember working in a movie theater. This movie Courageous came out, and it was about these four cops. It was like, I think it was produced by like an evangelical group, like stuff like that, and it's like I could see that does kind of worry me, or is it something, is this a story that was that pays tribute to the people that are the reason that you can even tell the story? I think what Josh said, there's a lot of failures, especially on, seeing the other side. I didn't even really consider that till he said it, of seeing the other side of the people who you're actually fighting. They're just two-dimensional brown guys. That's all they are. And it wouldn't hurt to see that these are people. Like, and I'm not saying to like, oh yeah, we should, hear their side of the story, but you need to see exactly what is going on. Like, you need to know your enemy, basically. And there's no scenes of them in a 2-hour long movie. There's really no scenes of them except at the beginning, when they show up to the village and grab that guy. There's really no scenes of them outside of their conflict with the main characters. So I do think that's a failing as well. But, I go back and forth because it's like, I'm glad they made the movie because hopefully it'll draw attention to the true story. And, whether that be the book or whether, there's inaccuracies in that, I have no idea. I've never read it. But ultimately, it's kind of like how I feel about, I love biopics. I love biographies. I love reading memoirs. And every time one comes out about somebody that I really enjoy, and I see the biopic and it's like, yeah, that's not accurate. And this is bullshit. And they made a villain out of this guy, and they, did this and did that. It's like, I just hope I guess the only thing I could take solace in, and I hope it brings people to the real shit that happened and people can draw their own conclusions. I mean, objectively as a movie, it's competent. It's good. There's some, that shootout scene, gratuitous as it is, and length and just, everything else it's well shot. I try to look at it as objectively and trying to, look at it and just specifically like technical things. Like Guzo said, that CGI gets a little wonky, up there on that cliff is one of them that looks real bad. I was like, dude, that looks awful. That looks like something out of like Scary Movie 5 or something. It looks terrible.
I don't know why they did that. Because they're clearly shooting in like a practical location. Surely they could have found a platform.
Yeah, maybe it's a reshoot. Like it was really strange. But all in all, I'm not mad that I watched it. I'm mad that I bought it because it was $3 more to buy than to rent. And I was like, it's got 75% of Rotten Tomatoes. I'll buy it. I'll probably never watch this again. It's not that I just like absolutely hate it. I watched it. I enjoyed it. It's educational more so just for the real life story, and that is what interests me. So I am at least thankful for that, but it's definitely not something I feel like I will recommend or will probably watch again.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think for me, I definitely watched this movie back in the theater. Exactly like how you just described, Colin. Like, it was just like, it says based on a true story, but every movie that says that I approach with like some kind of caution. Right. Like, it's likely that this is not, this is not the true story. So I kind of like use it as like a jumping off point, like hey, this is broadly what happened in this situation. And then like after the movie finishes, I go out and do more research on it. And I'm glad that this movie gave me that because, again, hearing about doing some research and doing some digging on Operation Red Wings and finding out who Muhammad Ghalib was and just how much of a shit show the planning of this operation was. I find that like incredibly interesting. Because it's just like, I don't know, like I'm doing a fucking, this is not a brag. I'm doing a criminology master's. Fucking brag. But like in a, what were you going to say, Josh? You're going to fucking sledge me. You're going to fucking sledge me.
Present your case, please. You may approach the bench. Sure.
It's bifurcated. Like one of the units that we're studying this semester is like wargaming. So like, you know, it's not particularly like military exercises, but it's more about like what would happen if a terrorist situation presented itself here, like in a modern society. So like, you know, some guy runs the curb of like in a van. What would happen? Like, what are the next steps? Like, who's going to react? So like, you know, like seeing the planning stages of an operation like this and just how wrong it went and like what could have been done to potentially save these guys' lives, right? I mean, like, Josh, your idea of like, you know, inserting a different team, you know, somewhere down the ridgeline, that could have saved these guys' lives, right? Like, you know, that's not out of the question. You know, it's good.
To be clear, stuff. Not my idea. This was from like reading after action reports. Like, right. This is the idea of other like military professionals that like, hey, I think this was a little foolhardy. But sorry to interrupt. I just didn't want to take credit.
Absolutely.
Like I'm some kind of fucking Napoleon over here.
Yeah, but look, as a movie, I think it's well shot. It's well directed. It sounds amazing. I think the sound design in this movie is incredible. The way that they shoot the actual like military implements and vehicles, right? I mean, like the actual helicopters, dude. Those Chinooks, the actual insertion scene looks fucking amazing. The helicopters flying over as Axelson and Luttrell think that they're being rescued. That scene to me is just so I watch that on YouTube sometimes. Like again, it's the music, it's the way Ben Foster reacts to that situation. There's something about that that's really, really amazing to me as a movie. And I think it's a good movie. And I don't know why I revisited it. I revisit it more than I do some other movies, some other military movies. Like I haven't seen Black Hawk Down in a while. It's been a minute. But when that came out, in high school, I watched that quite a bit. But this one, I don't know why I revisit this a little bit more. Maybe it's because of the Hollywood action stuff. Maybe it's because it's lightening a heavy situation. I don't know.
Well, it's contemporary too. Like there was a thing to that. Like this happened in your life, Zoeb. Like, and not that. Right. I mean, Black Hawk Down probably did too, as it did in my life. But as a child, but this was there's something different that like you were quote unquote there for this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that's Operation Red Wings, dude. Holy shit, we fucking finally reached the end of it.
Thank God.
Holy shit.
Goddamn.
No, I'm just kidding.
Josh, thank you so much again, dude, for jumping in for this episode. This was awesome, and this episode would not have been anywhere close to the quality. I think this is a good episode. It would not have been anywhere close to the quality that it would have been without you, dude. So I really appreciate it, man. This is fucking great.
Well, again, thank you for having me on. I apologize for the fucking million diatribes I went off on. But I did like, I like talking about this shit. And like, I don't ever bring up my military shit like out of context, but I enjoy talking about it. Like I don't know. I am very annoyed by vets that just like run around talking about vet shit and like being vets and patting themselves on the back for being vets. But I have certain experiences and I'm interested in them and I enjoy talking about them in the right context. So I hope that was good. I hope it lended a little bit to it. And, also I do a podcast about Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, you do. Yes, you fucking do. And you'll never forget it.
So, a little bit of this, a little bit of that's my feedback is like, hey, spread it out. Have a little bit of different things in your life,
Spread the love.
Yeah. Go kill people in Afghanistan, but also play pretend in like
Role
fantasy land. Yeah.
Role play.
Yeah.
Before we head out, dude, why don't you plug your stuff? And we'll get out of here.
Oh, I think I just did. Nastygram. Please check out
Nastygrampod.com.
nastygrampod.com. And of course, LSG Media as my bread and butter. X-Files podcast is my main thing, but check it all out. There's a lot of stuff there. LibertyStreetGeek.net. The new one, actually, I am loving Dean's new pod with Nathan is called Kirking Off. If you're into Star Trek. It's fucking great, especially if you're not a hardcore Star Trek fan, as I am not. Like, I'm more of like, I've watched the movies, but like haven't watched like a ton of the TV shows. And they're doing a podcast and like kind of just grabbing random episodes from different series. Like, there's so many different Star Trek series, and you don't have to have seen the episode. So he's actually not paying me to plug it. I just have genuinely been enjoying that one. So yeah.
No, that's awesome, dude. And of course, you know, I don't know if you have I don't think you have lately, but you know, your appearances on the Lost Drive-In, where I think your last one might have been Star Wars. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think so. I'm not on the main feed too much.
That was a love fest. But you liked that movie more than Lone Survivor, right?
Yes, I would say I did. I would say my feelings on what was that one called even? Return of Skywalker, Revenge of Skywalker? Yeah. I like it as much as
something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
But as much as I like Marvel movies. Sorry, you guys. I know you love them.
You watch yourself. You watch yourself.
Funny, I haven't been asked on for any of those.
Yeah. I wonder why. Oh, shit. Colin, anything you want to mention before we head out of here?
No, man, just, thanks to Josh for coming on, and thanks to you guys for hanging out to the end. I will say, if you haven't rated and reviewed us on iTunes, please definitely go and do that. It's free. It helps the show so much. And our Patreon, again, is patreon.com/Midnight Double Feature. You can find all of our shit at midnightdoublefeature.com, find all of our socials and stuff like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me, man. You want to get out of here?
Yeah, let's get out of here. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Josh, thank you so much for joining us, man. This has been a blast. Well, as fun as it can be to talk about death on mountain ranges. Yeah. And you know, this has been amazing. It's always a pleasure to be hosting you, dude. And you know, we definitely want you back on ASAFP. So
name the day, baby. I'll be there.
No worries. Guys, we'll see you guys next time on Midnight Double Feature. Catch you later.